is 30 minutes beyond our schedule. But let me tell you that we have a wonderful program, this wonderful CME that we are going to have now. Let me introduce one is Dr. Anjan Bhattacharya. Now, sir is a senior consultant, developmental pediatrician at Apollo Gleneagles Apollo Hospital, Kolkata. He will be talking on the wonderful work he has been doing. Along with his team, he has developed the Center for Development for Children, and it's an amazing thing which he has done, and we'll be showcasing that. His team, and then we have Dr. Meena Chintapalli. I think she is very passionate. You love her speak. She's got such a knowledge on this developmental behavior abnormalities in children. And then we have the other speaker is Dr. Sharmila, who will be also speaking to us. And we have Shreya Datta, who's also joining us in the CAB. Now, to give a brief of this, we all know that the stages of child development, that's, we have prenatal, infancy, toddler, early childhood, middle childhood, adolescence, early, middle, late adulthood also. So the childhood is not just, it's not 1 to 2 years, it would extend until adulthood. It's a very complex thing. I would like to introduce one term, what's called multisensory integration, MSI. What does it mean? Multisensory integration is, when I see, through my eyes, I get some visual inputs. When I hear, I get auditory inputs. When I walk, I get some sensations from the floor, from my vestibules, and so on and so forth. So all these inputs are assimilated in my brain, and then my brain will start understanding what is happening, and then there is a response that is generated, which is appropriate to the sensations what I have received. So this is an extremely important activity. Our responses are based on what inputs I get. Now, when does this MSI develop? That's a big question mark. When does this multi-sensory integration start? Is it the child is born with this capacity, or he acquires this as things progress? That's a very complex thing. For example, we see that when a child is born, it takes at least 6 days or 1 week to have that eye and hand coordination. He starts moving his hand towards something he sees. Then we know about the cognitive development. The children starts cognition, days, weeks, months, years, and so on and so forth. And then there is a behavioral pattern. All these we know will be dependent on what the experiences he goes, apart from what he is actually, right? We also see these defects like dyslexia, cognitive behavior, and then the executive function. Then there is a problem with this processing speed. There's some people who are very slow to, and then we have a serious problem with this attention. There is attention deficit, whether it is hyperactive or underactive. We have attention disorders. There's so many things which we are able to see. The biggest problem is that for anybody to recognize these deficiencies, forget about why it happens. But when a child is being, he's growing, to understand that there is something, a problem is happening, right? Forget about what led to this problem. But even to understand, for the parents, for the teachers, it's an extremely difficult thing. By the time it is diagnosed, by the time it is understood there is a problem, it is already late. And then there is the next step when they go to a physician, when they go to a doctor, or when they talk to somebody else, again there is further delay because these concepts are really not understood. We are not able to understand where is the origin of this problem, why is this child behaving like this. So there is a problem about the diagnosis. Now, the other thing what we also see is early diagnosis is much better than the late diagnosis. For example, a child who is young can learn, but when he grows up, he is not able to. If you have an auditory problem in childhood 2 to 3 years, believe me, he will not be able to speak the rest of his life. So it becomes a big problem for them. So this is a big problem statement, and let me tell you, it's a tsunami that is happening all the pediatricians and the physicians are already having to see this a lot of patients and people coming with this kind of problems. But the question is, how do we deal with this particular problem? How do we take care of this problem? That's a big problem now. The best thing is now we have a reasonable understanding of these problems. We also have a reasonable therapies that can be done. In fact, they are wonderful things. Probably a children who is not able to say few words, after the therapy starts, he is able to speak some sentences. It's an amazing thing what happens for the children and for the families and the parents. So there is a therapy, but what is more important is lack of awareness is the biggest problem today. I think we need this whole CME program is designed so that we get an idea of this particular problem and what are the solutions or therapies that are available. So with this introduction, may I welcome Dr. Anjan, to take this forward. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi, the DMS of Jubilee Apollo. Thank you, Apollo Group, for understanding the momentous need for something that we can do together. And we are very proud from our Kolkata teams, from Apollo Multi-Speciality Hospital, Kolkata. The Child Development Center started 15 years back. And now we can actually claim that we have enough technology to erase the face of the disabilities that we are talking about. So our motto is, disability is only in the eyes of the beholder. But let me not tell about this right now. Let us see how we have actually conquered over these problems. And Apollo is one of the premier institutes of India in healthcare, and that is where our Child Development Center really boasts about its premierness, which now we want every Apollo, every corner of India to have the solutions for these children who otherwise are left with being children of lesser God. So let us hear from our colleagues first, the complexities of it and how we actually go about it. So we request Dr. Sharmila actually to come and present from Apollo Jubilee about her perspective about complexities of the child developmental problems. So I would request Dr. Sharmila to take the podium and share her presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think at the outset, first I have to thank Ravi also. I remember just mentioning that I'm very passionate about certain things, owing to my own personal experiences and what I see as a professional these days, how the landscape is evolving right in front of my eyes. 11 years ago when I joined Apollo, versus what I am practicing right now. I'll tell you my personal experiences, definitely. So I was asked to talk about why child development centers are complex service developments. Before that, I'll tell you some interesting things. I'm sure all of you know about this, but then I would like to share my excitement about this. So, few of those things. I'll just leave it for thought. They're quite unrelated to what I'm going to talk about, but they really excited me. One such news, couple of news I'm going to share with you, is that there is this neuroscience development, the latest, probably one of the few latest things, where they could reverse autistic behavior in mice. That holds so much hope to so many people out there, including me. Because I can probably empathize, feel the pain of so many parents that I come across. And you will be surprised. There are a few other things that I'm really excited about. This actually is one exciting news. The other thing which is eye-opening is that while I was reading up for this talk, there is, I couldn't put that slide out there, but there is this revelation that maternal immune activation and various stressors during pregnancy and the nutritional status of the mother before she conceives. I will leave the concept of that golden 1,000 days to our very enthusiastic Jagadish to elaborate. I don't want to steal the thunder from him. But then I couldn't stop myself about this excitement. I mean, this is something saddening because what we see on the landscape, the serious developmental delays, are just the tip of those things that are happening as a result of what I said, antenatal stressors. In fact, they are present early, they are easily detectable. But you will be surprised all out there, because it was surprising for me too, that the spectrum encompasses right from developmental disability to autistic spectrum disorders, then go on to very eye-opening schizophrenia, depression, anxiety, peripubertal, and it doesn't stop there. It goes on to Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Everything is a spectrum of something. The seeds are sown during pregnancy. See, I always, I mean, I can accept if someone differs with me, but then I usually draw analogies between our mythology and what we are rediscovering. This is what I sincerely feel, because most of what we know about our mythology is not documented. It's not documented. The little that we have, the traditional wisdom that is documented, doesn't explain the process by which they reach the conclusions, and I feel most of it is being rediscovered, and that we call is science. So when we talk about early intervention, because this is very related to this topic, I know it might sound funny, but then I want to share my excitement about this. If we have, if all of us do know what they talk about Abhimanyu. So if it's about how he learned the art of penetrating the Chakravyuha and he didn't know how to come back. This is the, I will not say that it's exactly the same, but then we are rediscovering that things, epigenetics, maternal nutrition, then stress in early life, both antenatally and early childhood stress, is linked to an array of disorders. If we can intervene, the fact, if that is the fact, then we also know the solutions. We can just reverse what is happening to so many millions of families out there. So that is the excitement about rediscovering the neuroscience of early intervention, the neuroscience of how early life stressors can change everything about a child, about how he's going to evolve into a particular personality, what is the role of all these things. And I have personally seen a steep rise in, if I would say, the milder variety and also the moderately severe variety of autistic spectrum disorder. In the past 10 years, I have seen an increase in adolescent anxiety, depression, and various other disorders. So if we can make a difference, then how do we make it? Is by being aware that you have to pick it up early. You have to emphasize the importance of maternal health prenatally. That is the biggest investment a parent, an individual can do to its offspring and also to the society at large. These interventions are definitely going to change, go a long way to decrease the economic burden. Even if you want to talk in terms of money, There is this discussion going on every economic forum about how neurodevelopmental disability is going to cost us dear. Catch them early is the right thing. So if we have to talk about what does Child Developmental Center deals with, what is it at all? What is it that early intervention does? There is one beautiful sentence that Richard Horton, who is the editor of Lancet, said about these therapies. I really like this, so I wanted to share. It's not a drug, it's not a vaccine, it's not a device. It's a group of therapists working together, solving problems, and enhancing capabilities. Can someone help me with this slides? So, why did I like this sentence? Because this actually tells us how you can make a difference. It's not essential that something has to be a medicine or a device to change lives. And this definitely tells us how important it is. Before we proceed, why should we be concerned at all? What is the disability burden that we are shouldering? It came to me as a shock because even I didn't know that stats are so bad right in India. This is I think 2016. 1 in every 8 children, I was aghast, has a neurodevelopmental disorder. And what does developmental disorders, what do they encompass? According to DSM-5, it's about intellectual impairment, communication impairment, autistic spectrum, ADHD, specific learning disorders, motor disorders, tic disorders, and that group which is called as other neurodevelopmental disorders. When you take into consideration all these, if 1 in 8 is the number, why are we waiting at all? This is an emergency. And WHO, mark my words, has already warned us just prior to COVID. The next pandemic is going to be the mental health pandemic. And I can see it underway. I can see it as an individual pediatrician, it being underway. There is a pandemic. Both adults, children, and because of adults, the yet unborn people, and everyone, all in sundry. So there is every reason why we should now act. Now is the time. So next. So like I said, the disability burden is too much. And when it comes to autism spectrum disorders, it's described that it is no less. This is the commonest misconception that India autism is not so much. No, it has proved that it is parallel to the global burden. And mark my words, the hearing impairment exceeds the global burden. And one good thing that we have started in Apollo and many other places obviously is the newborn hearing screening. I have seen personally a child who was detected at birth, got implanted in infancy. The parents have to tell me that this child has a hearing impairment. Being a pediatrician, I couldn't make out. So that's the impact of early intervention. So what are the challenges involved? Why is it that child development centers are a challenge, or why is it that the disability burden is so overwhelming? Very simple reasons which we can change. Lack of awareness. It's not just about the parents, please. It's not just about the parents. I will tell you one personal anecdote. I had a child. Most of the autism spectrum that I diagnosed came to me not because of language delay. No. The earliest I think probably I sent someone for evaluation is somewhere between 12 to 18 months. Now I know that there are ways you can actually early intervene then somewhere between 6 months earliest or even earlier too, when they're not able to take interest in human faces or cues. So I'll leave that again to the next speakers to elaborate on that. So, no, just go back.
Just a second.
So what are the challenges? Lack of awareness. When I say that, I leave the parental awareness. That's too far. And in fact, parents are more aware these days. There is a lot of, there was a child who came back from the US for a holiday, who came to me for an upper respiratory infection. Mark my words, this child had every single appointment on date in the United States of America. And they were clueless when I said that I am almost sure this child is autistic. It came as a big blow to these parents. It took 2-3 sessions for me to convince the mother, then at least 3 months of persistence for them to go for evaluation for this child. This is not an isolated thing. I've seen a similar thing happen for an NRI kid in Singapore. And the sad story is that the child still is not under therapy. So this is what actually makes my heart bleed, because you are denying that window of opportunity that the child has to get into mainstream, if I can say that word. They might be differently able. And one more interesting thing that I read when I was going through this neuroscience is that they are actually doing studies about how to change the language between two neurons, what they call the chattering. In fact, they are on the verge of a breakthrough. If you can redesign what one neuron is talking to the other neuron, then there is a lot of noise that you can calm down in a child with autistic spectrum. There is one more thing. I've given a talk prior to this, maybe a year or two ago, about the incidence of autistic spectrum disorders in children born with IVF conception. Yes, all these trends are ancient wisdom about maternal health, why a mother should be happy during pregnancy, why a mother should be cared for. All these have their roots there. Why people should have probably conceived at the right age, and all the procedures that are happening to an IVF conception, the irradiation, whatnot, everything can definitely lead to an increased incidence of all this burden. Maybe we should start having a relook about how we live, what is important. It's a very beautiful statement that I wanted to share about this. The story of your baby begins much before birth. Many things we need can wait. This is to all the parents out there. I'm not telling you anything that I didn't practice. The first 6 years for both my kids, I was hardly working 1 to 2 hours. The child cannot. Now is the time. His bones are formed, his mind developed. To him, we can't say tomorrow. His name is today. Act now. So this actually describes how important it is to intervene. So coming back to the challenges, why are we not able to detect? Why are we not able to intervene? There is delay in acceptance. This is one place where I really struggle, but then I don't give up. Even at the risk of the parents changing their pediatrician, because whoever breaks the bad news is the one they never want to visit. But then I'm happy that I could help some child. The complexity of the care, which I will be elaborating. Hello? Hello? I'm sure my segment doesn't need it. So the complexity of the care, this is what I'm going to.
Elaborate because you're on like.
Okay. So please check. Yeah, it's fine. So delay in acceptance, this many people will definitely comply. And people who accepted, I can proudly say that the interventions really helped a couple of children. And I usually ask these parents to give their voice, to motivate the other parents, to show them that there is light at the end of the tunnel. This actually makes parents go to therapy early. The complexity of the care, the long-term continuity. The other two things are very valid. See, unlike many other chronic diseases, when you have seen a child with moderately or severe autism, you will understand what a parent is going through. they see very little improvement for many months, many years, and they're supposed to continue it, God knows till when. The financial and emotional burden is extreme. In fact, I tell them that, particularly in our scenario, in our culture, to take care of yourself is viewed as selfishness. I, in fact, reiterate every mother and father out there, the first thing that they have to do to help their children is to help themselves. Have your me time. Do things that make you happy, because this is going to be a long journey. And then every little help is good. And there is nothing called having a perfect life. Next please. So the golden 1,000 days, I think I'll leave it. I did tell those one or two things that I was excited about. How much early intervention can make a difference. So what is the challenge? The challenge is about the interdisciplinary coordination of a multidisciplinary team. This is the crux of therapy. This is the crux of the problem too. This is the limiting factor. Next. See, so what did I mean by that? So interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary. So how many services are there after all? Why is it so complex? I've listed out a couple of them. Right from the pediatric services, the dental services, occupational therapy, which means they'll be trained to lead life. They'll be trained for an occupation, like doing a particular thing, a particular job. That is what the occupational therapy teaches. The physical therapy, which is very popular, the psychological services, the audio and the ENT care, which is very, very important. If the child has to receive what you're saying, the most important thing is that his sensory system is intact. This is the primary thing that we have to evaluate. Speech and language pathology, behavioral therapy, how to modify, how to cancel out those behaviors which are not letting the child receive the therapy. Sensory integration services. There are a lot of controversies about this, but then it definitely plays an important role. How you integrate various sensory inputs, how one sensation will not get overwhelmed, how something like deep brushing itself can calm down some children, and various other things. Next, vision services, which is very, very important. All of these have critical periods when they have to be stimulated. Later on, very sadly, for someone, I have seen cochlear implantees who have been implanted in infancy versus someone who's got implanted as late as 10 years, 12 years. And I can see a sea of difference. What you never experienced in your infancy in the first 2 years, that's about the value. It is so difficult even to get that faculty back. So the diet, about diet, I wanted to share one more very interesting thing. So there was this study in a South African place, Guatemala. It was done, just let me get the facts right for you. It was done as early as, I think, 1969 to 77, if I'm not wrong. They studied the impact of, they chose some villages. They studied the impact of giving a high protein diet to a particular group versus a low protein normal energy drink to the other group. They selected the pregnant women, they selected toddlers, less than 3-year-olds. And then they followed up and they found amazing things. They again followed these children up in 2004 or 7. I'm not very sure about the number. I think I missed it. Okay. Yeah. And they have found that 46% increase in their ability to what matters most for this world, the economic impact that it gave to these children who had a very good nutritional support antenatally and in the first 2 years. And it made a sea of difference about what are the skills they acquired. They followed the same group so many years later. Why did I choose to cite this is one thing, this is about the nutrition, but then this extends to every other faculty, what an early intervention can do, how many wonders it can do. And it will be very interesting to note that in the less than 2 years, or more importantly, probably in infancy, synapses are formed at the rate of 700 to 1000 per second, which is like mind blowing. And when you can impact it at that point, how much of a difference can you make to someone's life? So, so that is the importance of early intervention, but then this is the complexity of, if so many services have to be rendered to get a wholesome developmental center ready, how many places can we have them? Unless there is a governmental commitment and support. And for that to happen, we have to reiterate to everyone who matters, who can make policy decisions, that this is going to be one of the most fruitful intervention, even if you take into consideration the economic burden it can leave with the kind of incidents that we have right now. If we wake up now, I think we can make a lot of difference, not just to lives, but to the economy of the country. We are investing into something that's going to make a big difference. So even if they were to be so complex, it still is worthwhile. Next. So again, it reiterates, it's about the challenge for trained manpower. So we have to be committed. We have to train as many personnel. In fact, even pediatricians, general practitioners, everyone should be aware about how to pick up a child. So one of the very important things that's lacking is follow-up of high-risk newborns. This is where you can pick up most of them, and if there is a proper manual for someone to operate, it's just like math. You check this 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you pick up maximum number of children. So why is there a delay in picking up? Because we never can pick up anything that we are unaware of, unless you're made aware of it. It has to be in the curriculum, both for medical graduates and non-medical graduates, as to how to pick up a child who needs early intervention. And early intervention never comes. So definitely, this is what is the need of the hour. Next. So a quick run through about all the gadgets that you can have in a good development center, just to let you know that there are so many ways that you can help a child. With this, I take leave. Thank you all for patiently listening to me.
Thank you so much. I think, Dr. Sharma, that's a wonderful lecture. I should say that, you really aroused our feelings, and, I think we're all now passionate about what you told. So now I have Dr. Jagdishwar. Again, he is also equally passionate and learned, experienced person in this area. He's been speaking to me for a very long time that we should work in this area. I welcome you, sir.
Other neurons. The moment you see the neurons of these guys, the neurons are not as properly speaking placed in shape as it happens in the normal. And one of the best things to pick up is EMS. The EMS, and perhaps I would wonder if some other person is going to shed the light on it.
Sabhaya Namaha, Gurubhyo Namaha, Sabak Namaskaram. Thank you very much, Apollo, for giving me this wonderful opportunity to share my experiences and to present the important vital concepts in the area of child development. Thank you very much. Please play the video.
ஹலோ சித்ரா, இது நம்மளுக்கு கரெக்டு தான் ஷேர் ஆக மாட்டேங்குது. நமக்கு அந்த வீடியோ இதில் காமிக்க மாட்டேங்குது. ஓகே, ஆமாம் ஆமாம், ஸ்க்ரீன் வரலையே. இது கொடுத்து அப்படியே ஷேர் பண்ணிடுவா. இல்லைடா வரலையடா, பேக் எண்டில் போயிட்டேன். இந்த வீடியோ இருக்கா? நான் வந்து ஷேர் ஸ்க்ரீன் கிளிக் பண்ணியாச்சு. சாரி, சர்ச் நம்ம கிளிக் பண்ணியாச்சு. அவ்வளோதானா? ஓகே, அப்போ நான் பண்ணிடுறேன். இது கிடையாது வீடியோ, அது வேற. இப்போ வருதா? இப்போ வருதான்னு பாரு. எனக்கு வீடியோ வரலையா? ஏன்? எதில் ஷேர் பண்ணேன் நான்? இப்போ ஷேர் ஸ்க்ரீன். ஓகே ஓகே ஓகே, ஷேர் ஸ்க்ரீன். ஓகே, ஷேர் இல்லையாடா எனக்கு? வெறும் ஷேர் கொடுத்துருவாங்க.
The video, this one.
This is not the video.
What is the video?
Go to this.
This one.
Yeah, click on this. Yeah, double click on this.
What is the video?
Just
Like first.
options names. Yeah, this is the thing. Actually,
Clear.
so it's not. Now it's
Thank you very much for viewing the video related with the first 1,000 days of life. So why the first 1,000 days really matter? This is the topic which I am going to talk about. Thank you. Next. Next. This is my presentation. I am dedicating to my beloved teacher, Dr. P. Sudeshwar Reddy Garu, Professor at the Department of Pediatrics. Now is no more physically, but I am presenting this on behalf of. Children respect those who respect them. Everyone should accept this first. When we accept the child as he is, then the journey starts. Without acceptance, nothing can be done. No intervention cannot be successful. That is all. Next. A happy family is a healthy biological unit in the society. Biological unit in the society. Next. So when there is a righteousness in the heart, there is a beauty in the character. When there is a beauty in character, there is a harmony in the home. When there is a harmony in the home, there is an order. That's order, chronological order in the society. When there is order in the society, there is a peace in the nation and world. It is a fundamental, basic health definition, as who said, that is World Health Organization. That domains are physical, intellectual, psychological, emotional, and spiritual wellness. Next. So, the 1,000 days. What are these 1,000 days? Most of the people, common public, do get confused with 1,000 days. After birth or prior to birth. Even 40% of the public, they do not know this. Even professionals also. It is true in reality. So, the first 270 days of the gestational period, next 365 days, that is the first year. The next 365 days, that is the second year. Totally beautiful 1,000 days God created. It's architect design. There is a software design already. Prenatal design. This is what the 1,000 days. You can see the one number 000. The pictures indicate the journey of the human life. Next. So the story of baby begins much more prior to birth. This is what the early screening, early diagnosis, early intervention. Not after, prior to birth. This is very important. Next. So pregnancy, is it internal or external? Gynecologist and obstetrician, they say that it is ectopic pregnancy and all. Now we are talking about a different aspect here. It's, I think, for the first time you might be exposing to this concept. So both. Pregnancy is both external and internal. Let's see what is that. Next. Yeah. Pregnancy continues externally for the first 2 years after birth. It will continue. Even after spending 9 full gestation months in the womb of the mother, the human babies are some of the most helpless creatures in the world. Helpless. If you look at the giraffe expects the baby big, neck, and elephant expects from the baby weight, and a peacock colorful, but the mother expects a good brain. Natural, it's a nature. Okay. So a child needs their parents near them for a lifelong after they have left the womb. So other animals just hop up and starts walking hours or days after birth, but the humans take many, many years. Long journey is there. So really here the actual intervention matters. Next. So baby continues to be a kind of external pregnancy for an entire 2 years after they're born. Entire after 2 years. Next. So their previous connection with the mother is through umbilical cord, that is internal pregnancy. Then now it continues to the breastfeeding, that is external pregnancy. So the breast becomes the new point of connection where baby can receive the food and immunity, emotional balancing intention through milk. So here 2 things are there. Back side. Neuro exercises, neuro nutrients. So the neuro nutrients are the IQ nutrients, intelligence quotient, micronutrients, and which they get from the mother's milk. And the neuro exercise is the brain exercise to sucking the milk. That is nothing but the neuro exercise or cognitive intellectual exercise. Next. Back. So during the during the breastfeeding them, keep in mind it's a one physical emotional system between the mother and baby. This is very important. Emotional connection. Just giving the milk is not. That's the physical. But there is no emotion. The mother is talking with someone and giving the milk. That won't help the child to develop the skills or domains. So what we really get? There's a sacred time. Specified time. The mother has to spend that quality of time without talking with anyone in a privacy environment. so that the baby enjoys. So many development it takes place there. Cognitive, intellectual, that is speech, language, sensory, so many. So positive thoughts during at the time of lactation is very important. Positive thoughts, the mother's mindset should be very calm, very quiet, very peaceful. Is it really happening? Question mark. Next. So positive hormones are the oxytocin, which improves the positive mood, or temperamental. At the same time, stress coping mechanism, that is nothing but the defense mechanisms which the baby gets from the oxytocin. And social well-being, that is nothing but the social communication or reciprocation, which the autism spectrum disorder children will be having. This difficulty will be there. Next. So what is positive and negative neurostimulation which is happening in utero or during the pregnancy time? Next. So fetal origin of adult disease, if you look at, healthy nutrition gives normal weight, overnutrition gives obesity, undernutrition gives underweight. It's a conformed statement. Next. So if you look at during the pregnancy period or gestational period, what happens? So the fetus can feel the touch during the 8 weeks of the gestation, and the pain sensation also the fetus will feel during the 27 weeks of the pregnancy, and the taste also 12 weeks during, and the swallowing is again 13 weeks, and hearing, listening, learning 18 weeks. So the fetus knows what the mother is speaking, what the father is speaking, what the father is doing, what the mother is doing, what the family members are doing. Everything the fetus is learning. It is under learning. Learning is taking place during neural connections. So Bhakta Prahalada and Abhimanyu stories already Indian mythology clearly revealed. It is there. Okay, it is evident. It may not be documented, but it is evident. Next. So if you look at this from the conception to birth, these are the very important crucial time, which is neglecting by the parents. What the parents are doing after the delivery, not the prior. If we focus during the antenatal care, definitely we can prevent most of the neurodevelopmental disabilities. Next. And backside once more, backside. Go back. Most of the sensory pathways, that is vision and hearing and speech language communication, higher cognitive function, pathways will be formed during the gestation period. That means sensory development will be taking place during the intrauterine life itself. Okay, next. So biological embedding, if you look at, epigenetics affects the genes, at the same time brain listens to the environment, that is epigenetics. So whatever the baby, I mean the fetus, or whatever the mother exposed to the environment, maybe psychosocial stimulation, or economical, financial, social, whatever, love, care, concern, the family members, everything affects the genetic anatomy and physiology and chemistry. This is what the epigenetics is doing. Next. So epigenetic effects, genes listen to the environment, interplay between the genes and environment. There is a lot of controversy between the heredity and environment, nature versus nurture. Still the controversy is going on, but the epigenetics is playing the role. 80%. Out of 100% genetics, 20%, 80% is epigenetics. Again, out of 80, 20 is nutrigenetics. This is very important. So here, some of the adverse events are taking place. Nutritional aspect, environmental toxins, abusive behavior from the peer group or sibling or from the parents and the community, and also the maternal stress, which is happening. Every mother is under stress, no doubt. Show me a mother who is not under stress. No one. So inherited. So this is what the epigenetics. Next. Effect of the maternal stress, fetal maximum on average 50 to 60%. No doubt, it's confirmed. And low birth weight babies, maybe low birth weight, LBW, or very low birth weight, or extreme low birth weight, whatever it is. And also developmental delays in the low birth weight. It's happening. Developmental delay are differences maybe gross motor, fine motor, personal, social, speech, language, communication, sensory, whatever the domain, everything, there is a delay. Definitely show me one child, any child, who is not having delay nowadays. He will be like you and me. We are mysterious sometimes. So we also may be under spectrum. We should accept the reality. Not only the children with the neurodevelopmental disabilities, we are also under spectrum. It's a fact from my side. It's my personal opinion. Next. So prenatal bonding, very, very important. By looking the picture, see how it is, what it is conveying. It is conveying much. So establishing, the word establishing is very important. This is initiation. Step one. rich connection, not poor connection, rich connection with the prenate, okay? Then the womb is a stimulating phase. If MTV is happening, then it is not a stimulating. If the mother is under stress, it is not stimulating. So here the womb should be a stimulating phase. That means sensory stimulation should take place here. And babies in the womb are alert, awake, and attentive to activities involved voice, touch, music, taste, and smell all. So sensory pathways are neuronal connections, neuronal plasticity is happening. Next. Prenatal bonding reduces cortisol levels in labor. Yes. So we can prefer the normal delivery instead of C-section. It decreases pain and shortens labor. C-sections can be decreased, and also rates increase the breastfeeding, and also infants neural and prenatal growth. That is very important. Next. So taking iodine during the pregnancy boosts the baby's brain. But how many mothers are really knows this? Is it? No. Very few people. When we give also, they may not accept, they may not consume, they may not eat. Next. So pregnant women with gum and teeth, that is peri-oral, okay, this is higher risk of delivering preterm and low birth weight. It is also one of the reasons. Next. So negative hormones. When it comes to negative hormones, anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder, GAD. Most of the parents or adults nowadays are suffering with GAD, GAD. Okay, even separation anxiety disorder, SAD. SAD and GAD, very common, prevalent incident. So this leads to the increase in the cortisol production. At the same time, cortisol in the fetus, which will increase the intrauterine contraction and other premature delivery. Such a bad thing is happening, adverse events, adverse events. So we have to prevent all this. So maternal stress during pregnancy affects gross motor skills, fine motor skills. The child may be, lacking behind in the gross motor, like, walking, jumping, hopping, and also fine motor activities like hand coordination, fine motor skills. Next. So 10 commands for the prenatal stimulation. Tactile stimulation, that's maternal touch. Flavor, there is each variety of stuff that's food. Swadruha food, not the outside junk food, not outside food, not preservative food or fast food or instant food. No, only Swadruha food, variety. The mother has to prepare, the family must prepare with the hands. Hands, touch should not be the spoon. Touch should be there. The baby should feel that. That is very important. Auditory stimulation, soft music, not the drums music. If you give drums music, the ADHD child is going to be given. Attention deficit hyperactive disorder. You start with dancing music. Yes, definitely. So soft and rhythmical music. Visual stimulation, avoid TV, social media. Very important. Nowadays, the IT belt. Most of the working women is on laptop. So a smaller, lower dose of radiation is going inside. Neuronal pathways penetrating. It's TV. TV is a gadget, smartphone is a gadget. Even now, everything electronic, digitalized. So we are living in the world of digitalization and radiation. That is what the prevalence of autism spectrum disorder or other spectrum disorder is. So we have to, there should be some social policy here. Then health of body and health of mind, prenatal bonding. So all this father's role is very important. We should not ignore or we should not isolate the father's role. He plays a vital role, which is not happening in most of the homes. So mother is a multi-targeted. Mother targeted from the in-laws, mother targeted from the husband, mother targeted from the working employer. She's having so many responsibilities. So she could not be able to concentrate on her own health, psychological, emotional, physiological health, which is affecting her maternal stress. Next slide, please. So reduction of stress during labor allows the natural birthing hormone. You know that? Birthing hormone also responsible for mother and child bond. That is very important. Next. So the moment a child is born, the mother is also born. How? Think. You'll get the answer. Next. So there is a need for a universal nurture curriculum from 0 to 3 years of age. So everyone is working on this 0 to 3 years curriculum or syllabus. Scientists. Intellectuals solve the problems, geniuses prevent them. So who is genius, who is intellectual here? Policy makers are there and family parents. Next. So the National Early Childhood Care Education Policy clearly stating that from birth to 3 years, the child should have survival, And safety, protective environment he should have, healthcare he should have, nutrition he should have, that too infant and young child feeding, and also attachment to another. Very important psychosocial stimulation he should have, and also the environment within the home, not outside. The child should be upbringing or brought up in the home environment or the family members. He should not miss from the family. He should not search from outside. Next. If you want your children to be intelligent, read them fairy tales. If you want them to be more intelligent, read them more fairy tales. Next. So babies, I don't want to go in detail, but here, stimulation of course required, recommended, but not over. Some parents, because of the over enthusiasm, over interest, they do stimulate more excess. So the excess stimulation causes so many developmental problems. Maybe emotional like hyperactivity, ADHD, some other attention deficit disorder, ADD, or maybe ADHD, so many. So please do not overstimulate the babies. Next. Teach the baby not. Teaching is different, training is different. Sikshana is different, Kama Sikshana is different. Jnanam is different, Vijnanam is different. So Vijnanam we want, not Jnanam. Sikshana we don't want, we want Krama Sikshana, organized. So this is what the difference. So this how the baby looks. I don't want to go in detail. Next. This is a 1 month baby. This is 3rd month baby. Next. 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 1.5 year baby. Next. Yeah. The toddler's creed. The toddler's creed. If I want it, it's mine. If you give it to me, or if you give to you, whatever, changes my mind. It's mine only, mine. If I take it away from you, also it's mine. If it's mine, it will never belong to anybody in this world, no matter whatever it is. It's mine. If we are building something together, all the pieces or fragments are mine. If it looks just like mine, it's mine only. So everything is mine. This is what the thought does. Next. 18 months. Next. 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 Yeah. Early childhood development, ECD programs for every child, early movements matters. Early movement matter. Next. Yeah. This is very important slide. James Heckman clearly stated that Dr. Sharvila clearly explained on economical relation with this. 2. If you look at the prenatal, look at here. The rate of return will be more if you invest on this prenatal period, during the prenatal. Maybe the nutrition, maybe the antenatal, whatever. Later 0 to 3 years, then 4 to 5 is schooling, So please invest on the prenatal or antenatal. Okay, next. So advancing early childhood development from science to scale, Lancet clearly stated that nurturing care, especially of children below 3 years, is utmost important. Utmost care is required for the development of the nation, economy, everything. Next. So what you do, what you eat, what you experience during the first 1,000 days has lifelong consequences for your health. As clearly Mullen said. So the brain is a very complicated than a human, the computer. Human being only created, but it's very complicated created. Architect, designer. So the experiences a baby has with his parents are crucial in early wiring. Early wiring experiences are very important. It matters a lot throughout the life. Throughout the life, pruning also it takes place. Millions and millions of new connections in the brain to be made. Next. The first 1,000 days is a singular window of opportunity. Because brain is having 5 windows. Vision, hearing, tactile, olfactory, gustatory, all 5 sensory organs are 5 windows. What happens in the sensory processing disorder? Information will be taken, but the problem is with sensory processing. So the execution difficulty will be there. So that is what the sensory processing difficulty of disorder. 90% of the child's brain development happens before the age of 5 years. So you have to be very careful. And here, the 1,000 neural connections every second is very important. Every second, not a minute. Look at the baby's neural pathways development. Next. So decades of rigorous research shows that what the children experience during early childhood, it matters a lot. Next. 100 billion neurons will be formed at the time of birth, individual neurons. 15% connections only will be made. Still 85% yet to connect. So this is what the time for the early intervention program. Next. So at the age of 3 years, almost 10,000 connections for each neuron will be formed. So we have to intervene as soon as possible when you identify. Next. So 75% of the brain growth will be completed by 2 years of age. So myelination almost by 2 years. Gross motor, fine motor skills again by 3 years. Personality traits by 2 years, whether it is introvert or extrovert personality. So everything is happening before 2. I'll give you an example. Then our parents will be sending our children to the swimming, general Indian scenario, 8 years, 9 years, or 10 years, or 15 years. But in the womb of the mother, the fetus is a good swimmer. Is a good swimmer. Once it, because of the swimming only in the amniotic fluid, the zygote will be formed into full-fledged, fetus. Then comes out from the womb of the mother. Yes or no? Yes. Immediately you keep the baby in the swimming pool with a wrap of some air tube. But why fear? That is what the misconceptions, superstitious beliefs, myths are there. So that we have to prevent. Another important social awareness. Next. So repeated parents and child interaction communication definitely help. I am using the word repeated. I highlighted. That is rehearsal, revision, or exercise, whatever. By with the child. This is with the mother or father, whatever. So memories, relationship on learning, logical thinking. So many skills will be developed because of the child and mother interaction. And this means a baby's brain is both complicated and vulnerable. Both complicated and vulnerable also. So vulnerability will be more. Psychosocial vulnerability. I am using the word. Psychosocial vulnerability, sensory vulnerability, speech language communication vulnerability. There are so many domains will be affected. Next. So use it or lose it. Positive experiences do not happen. The main neural pathways needed for normal human experience may be lost if the positive is not there. So positive experiences are very important. So decreased parental and human interaction causes delay of the speech language communication and also emotional development. Next. So epigenetics is a new science. We are talking about that. The environmental influence, psychosocial influence, and also health and nutrition, everything. Whatever is there surrounding the mother as well as the baby or the embryo. That is all the epigenetics. So epigenetics is an emerging area of scientific research, environmental influences, children's experiences. It will change the genetic structure. So we have to focus on epigenetics. Next. The science of epigenetics is reporting that long-term emotional inoculation. See, the word is inoculation. That is nothing but vaccination. We are talking about vaccination. This also will be vaccination. Emotional vaccination, psychosocial vaccination. Are we giving? We are rushing to the pediatrician for the vaccine shot. What about this vaccination? Not available outside in the market or in the dispensary. It is available at free of cost in our homes. No investment, no 1 rupee, free of cost. Total free. Next. Backside. Last slide. Yes. Persistent stress changes in the brain architecture of the baby. If you look at the normal, see the typical neuron, many connections are there. Many connections are there here. Here, less connections are there. That to the toxic stress during the pregnancy period. Next. So, what is the fuel for growing bodies of the child? Healthcare, nutrition, security, early learning, talking. Singing. Playing. Repeated. Interaction should be repeated. That's it. That's the only thing. Which we don't have time. We don't have time to spend. That is why all the neurodevelopmental disabilities. And we are working on that. Recruited especially for this task. Next. Yes. Use with the children. Yes word, good word, well done, more often. Positive. Don't. Never ever use the word do not with the child. Use the word do rather than do not. If you use the word do not, that means the child will do that only. You are reminding the child what he is not supposed to do. He will do. Right, don't go there. Mummy is feeling something is there. Let me go there. Anxiety disorder starts. Childhood anxiety disorder. It leads to generalized anxiety disorder later on. So APC method is very important. That is anticipate, behavior, consequence. Nothing but the rewarding system. Maybe the reinforcement, positive or negative, with the behavior modification therapy techniques, and also applied behavioral analysis, ABA techniques. Next. So cerebral circuits may be important. From the beginning of the third semester to the 24th month of life, the human brain more than doubles in size. Conditions apply. What condition apply? If it gets the right experience. Otherwise, it will not be doubled. The child will become slow learner. He will be suffering with dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia. Finished. Or ADHD. So that is also a problem. Next. So human brain needs communication, interaction. Communication, interaction is not there. No, electronic interaction is there. Digital interaction is happening. Aloof, robotic life is happening. Everyone is holding the phone, sitting consistent and calm, and eating, bunch eating, and becoming obese and PCOD problem. Early PCOD, early menopause, early osteoporosis, early osteoarthritis. All early. So man is a human. By nature is a social animal, as Aristotle clearly stated. So a social web. We are living in a web. We should connect with everyone, not select everyone. Why not everyone? Everyone. Everyone, whoever comes to you, interact in your way. That is very important, which we should teach the children. Next. It is during the first 2 years of life, baby immune system matures and also ripens considerably. So staying close to mom, being breastfed during the duration ensures developmental quotient DQ, social quotient SQ, spiritual quotient SQ, emotional quotient. All quotients. The most important quotients are emotional competency, social competency, rather than intelligence quotient. That is the least bothered aspect nowadays. The more intelligent is literally personal failure. Accept it. It's a reality. So IQ is not. So DQ, developmental quotient, emotional quotient, social quotient, and spiritual quotient. Next. So do babies really need socialize? Yes. Daycare centers are coming. 2.5 years. One school advertised people came to me. Sir, we started a school for 1.5 year age children. It's a new concept we brought. I asked what is the admission fee? 5 lakhs. For an hour. Provided food, sleep, care, everything. Then what about the parents? Who are the parents? What type of parenting is happening? So we are encouraging this kind of thing. We are the responsible, not the others. We are responsible. Everyone should ask themselves. Next. So the more time, the time children have spent in non-parental care, they may develop aggression, they may develop ADHD problems, no doubt. So do not separate. Otherwise, this is very important. Do not separate the mothers from the child. Working parents. I use the word working. I am with my child only, and I am just going to duty. I am coming back in the evening. What it comes for a 1 year baby? Separation, anxiety disorder, whether the baby is going to develop or not. Tell me. Productive time. The productive time is morning 9 to evening 5. The child is missing the productive time from the mother. Mother is in the office. Yes, mother is in the office. That is what separation anxiety disorder.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you, ma'am.
Something froze. I don't hear Dr. Jagdish talking anymore.
Yes, ma'am. I think so. There is a small technical issue, ma'am. We are trying to resolve that, ma'am. Give us 2 minutes, ma'am.
Okay.
The parents comes and complain that my child is not speaking.
Yes.
I will say immediately your child is speaking. I will tell. Yes.
Start.
Yeah. That connection. Right.
Just a second.
And actually, all the traditional practices, they used to insist that you keep child here, and that's where the adaptive pronouns comes.
Exactly. Scissoring rate, the child who is having scissoring rate.
I think it's Foxtrot and all these things are
True.
now. So this thing that we have realized that the hug is so very important. Even for adults.
Same time.
Yeah, questions.
They tell us
Ready.
how to do habits with more difficult. By doing gratitude, being kind,
So,
then giving a
yeah.
hug,
Thank you.
finishing a task.
Back.
All this just the four
Back
components
side.
we want for happiness.
Back.
The whole world.
Wait. Yes, we'll start. Next session, next slide, please. Next slide, yeah.
So how the negative formative years can impact a child's development, like behavioral issues, it may be attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, it may be oppositional, deviant, distractive, or fidget behavior, or antisocial behavior, or violent behavior, whatever it is, and juvenile delinquency behavior, and also having low level of self-esteem, lacking a sense of belongingness, developing depression, mental health issues, and addictions to the smoking, drugs, and all during the adolescence age. Next slide, please. So babies need the human interaction, not the interaction with the gadgets, with the screens. As who said, World Health Organization said very clearly that 1 hour, but online classes are going on for my child. Yes, very important. Otherwise, teacher will scold. Online exams. No screen time for babies under 2. No more than 1 hour screen per day for 2 to 4 years of the and child. Toddler. Next. So the behaviors that are the results of the screen time, there are so many, but few I mentioned. Psychosocial consequences: autism spectrum disorder, poor memory, poor motivation, depression, anxiety disorder, poor attention span, that is attention deficit disorder, poor cognitive function, poor judgment, and obsessive compulsive disorder, psychosomatization, psychosomatic disorder, functional reaction, psychosomatic form, conversion reaction, not conversion, conversion reaction. And also the dissociative disorder, introversion, psychotic behavior, poor anger management. Nowadays, the children are having this. Most of the adolescents are not able to have patience, tolerance, the outbusting, throwing temper tantrums. DSM fifth accepted the internet associated disorder as an addiction disorder. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Next slide.
So too much gadget use can damage your child. It can cause speech language communication development delay, attention deficits, learning problems, sleep problems like insomnia, hyposomnia, hypersomnia, anxiety disorder, childhood depressive disorder. Next slide, please. Our survival as a human community may depend as much as our nurture of love in infancy. In infancy. This is very important. In infancy. Next slide, please. So the angels in the nursery, there are 2 types, angels in the post. Emotional trauma. What are the angels in the nursery? What is nursery? Mother womb is a nursery. For the mother, environment is a nursery. Not the house, home. I'm talking about the home, not the house. Your attitude, your gesture, your posture, your behavior, your way of motivation. Positive means angels. Negative means devils. Next. Next. Yeah. Ghost. A psychoanalytic approach to the problems of impaired infant-mother relationship. That is called ghost. Once you enter into any house, you can see, is it a ghost house? Yes, or an angel house. Loving bonds, angels. Full development, potential, high potential. Scolding, abusing, or a ghost house, a jungle house. That's a wicked house. And you can intervene them later in a proper way. Next. This is a ghost house. Look at the apprehension of the mother and the child. The features, morphology. Next. Ghost. Aloof, loneliness. Next. Depression. Postpartum depression. Next. Next. Back side, please. Back. Look at the side. It conveys so much. The mother is aloof, lonely. She could not able to share. She herself suppressing her emotions, and she is giving milk. This breastfeeding is not at all workout. There is no emotional connection between the mother and the child or the baby, which we need to enhance or strengthen the bond. Next. See, the baby is left on the surface. The mother is crying, emotional, traumatized. So this is also a ghost. Next. Ghost from the nursery, tracing the roots of the violence. Next. It's a book actually. Fantastic. Next. The ghost in the nursery, the maternal representations of a woman who killed her baby. This is also one of the best books. Next. This is a updated version. Next. Yeah. Out of 5 children, 1 parent with mental illness nowadays globally. Next, this is what? 1 parent will be with a mental illness. Next. Here, so many are there. The child is feeling forgotten, removed, alone, lost, and abandoned, forsaken, unwelcome, invisible, guilty, and also isolated, excluded, lonely, unlovable, rejected, deserted, lonely, ditched, yellow, bastard. So many negative. Every child might be, or definitely, or certainly will be having either 1 or 2 more than this. Yes? Yes. Next. 80% of the new parents nowadays are facing the anxious period. They don't know how to do parenting because of the nuclear families, single parenting families in the urban settings. Yes? So they're anxiety. Completely unprepared for birth also, sometimes accidental. It's not welcome, it's accidental. Next. So the most valuable thing is what the parents can do free of cost is the love, the time, the support. All are available at free of cost from the parents. This is what the intervention, what the child needs. This is what the early intervention, what really the child needs. So science is now showing why babies' brains need love more than anything else nowadays. The new science of epigenetics is discovering more and more of our genes, our brains are affected by the lives we lead, how we are leading our life. That matters, the baby. That matters our baby's procreation, our development. Next. Backside please. Back. This is actually one of the developmental card with the immunization. I think Dr. Anjan sir knows this. So the pediatricians and clinicians, whenever the child comes for vaccination, they can screen any developmental deviation of any domain, and they can intervene the baby, or they can counsel the mother or father. Next. A good education begins at home. You cannot blame a school or institution for not nurturing values in your child that you have not instilled, not the professional outside. Next. So monkey see, monkey do, monkey do. What are the parents do? That's it. The child also saying. Next. So idiot syndrome is nothing but nowadays everyone, most of the people are suffering with this. Internet derived information obstructing the medical treatment. Because we are Googling Dr. Google. So please do not rely on Dr. Google. You may develop hypochondria, one of the serious mental disorder. Next. Yeah. See, look at the India. Look at our country and other nations. The next slide. More than 30%, very high percentage of children under 5 years who are stunted. Nutritional growth, whatever, stunted. We are at alarm. It's one of the pandemic, epidemic, not the sporadic, not endemic. Okay. So next. So in pediatrics, early means the critical period of a child development, that is 0 from the day of conception till the age of 3 years. So that means giving a variety of opportunities to experience and explore and play things around. This is what early intervention. Next. So please catch them young and intervene early. This is what the early intervention. Next. Next. Be who you needed when you were younger. It conveys much inherent meaning. Next. So Indian Academy of Pediatrics has now published evidence-based guidance to help the doctors and families on neurodevelopmental disabilities. Next. Thank you very much. That's a comprehensive presentation, but thick because of the technical issues, whatever. Thank you so much for your attention. Any challenges? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. I have 2 or 3 doubts. What is the role of grandparents in actually helping in early intervention, right? That is one. Second, I've seen a lot of families who actually moved out of this country in the child is 6 months, 7 months. And usually around maybe 1 year, 1.5 years, they were in the foreign country. When they come back, they have the spectrum. So what is your opinion on this?
India having values. Our land is having values, ethics, morals. Our tradition, our conventional practices are golden. Whereas in abroad, people are busy, isolated, aloof. There is no interaction, there is no communication, there is no eye contact. People are busy. During early childhood developmental age, if the child is there, naturally he will miss the stimulation. He will miss the early stimulation, which is affecting the speech language communication development, and the child will be falling on the spectrum. It may be comorbid sometimes. So many are there, like epilepsy. Example I'm giving, maybe the insomnia, sleeping sickness, or gastrointestinal problems, or even functional constipation, functional dysphasia. And along the other medical problems, even the child also may have ADHD, maybe having OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and also the specific learning disability. There are so many. So early childhood stimulation is missing in the child who is procreating or nurturing in abroad, where there won't be a grandparent, only mother and father and the child. Am I right? So there is no stimulation. Even the genetics, epigenetics, nutrigenetics also playing role. Actually, during the pregnancy period, if the pregnant woman exposed to some kind of thalamides or anything, definitely there's a chance of metal poisoning, maybe lead poisoning, maybe aluminum poisoning, or maybe some other. So metal poisoning also definitely serum metals elevation also one of the risks for neuronal problems or neuronal impairment. There are so many ecological factors, not one. But you are talking about the parenting, especially the grandparenting. Earlier parenting was there, and now parenting there is a gap. The gap we are unable to fill now. This is what the problem is. Because young parents are not accepting the grandparents. And grandparents say that, your child is perfect. Why you are going to the doctor? He can speak. You also spoke lately at the age of 3 years or 4 years. So this is what happening there. And the young parents who are educated, they are listening to the grandparents. They are not taking to the clinician. So there the development delay further is happening, which is aggravating further. So what I want to tell you is, please do not be after the diagnosis. Please be after the intervention. As soon as possible, you start intervening the child. When you identify or see the child with so and so developmental delay or difficulty. 4 Ds are important: disease, difficulty, disorder, and disease. Disease, disability, disorder, and difficulty. 4 Ds. This we should not, So parental counseling is utmost important. Parents are missing the sensitization, which is very important. Thank you so much. Actually, time is short, sir. If you don't mind. Yeah.
A minute, 60 seconds, because sometimes, only we tend to get the messages on the superficial level. So it's such a biological aspect or the neural oscillation aspect of it. So if you and me are seeing each other for 30 to 40 seconds, it looks like that our heartbeats are actually going to synchronize, which means your vibrations and my vibrations matches. So by anybody who is in this space, madam is talking, sir has excellent presentation. So whenever somebody is in stress or worries and things, the 13 plus oscillations increases, and the child doesn't have the integral processes for 2 reasons. The critical 1000 days, actually there is the arrest of the zero phase of the neuronal neural stem cells there. And the moment that arrest pattern happens, they stop moving around from their migration processes. And the synaptophorin is one protein which tries to open up and create the vesicles inside the synapse. So even in 1 second, the 5,000 neurotransmitters get flowed from those synaptophorin. So the moment this oscillation stops, the processes becomes off and hard. Grandparents, they look at them and they just contacting them, looking them, caring them. Again, this processes becomes degenerative.
Actually, sir, Dr. Sharmila ma'am clearly stated one thing very important. Actually, non-verbal gestures, non-verbal postures, non-verbal expressions, non-verbal eye contact are missing in most of the human population nowadays, because they are just keeping their eye in the gadgets. They are not looking at the person and not talking, not interacting, which is missing. That is affecting the child's eye contact.
Yeah.
So what I want to tell you is non-verbal is important. Once the baby born from the mother womb, do you think the child will talk? No, he will cry. The cry itself is a language. So when the parent comes to me, he's talking, now he's crying, he's laughing. That's his language. It starts non-verbal, am I right? Then verbal. So we need to explain positive.
We have to convey the parents. So parent counseling matters a lot. They have to tune with the therapist or the clinician where the failure is happening.
Much like ligand protein, the protein which creates the
This opportunity. And I just thank to Dr. Ravindra Garu, head from Medical Service and Apollo Group, and also the Dr. Anand sir. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to interact with all of you. Thank you so much.
We have lit up the stage, both Dr. Shamila and yourself. Because of lack of time, I think what we will do is, it's the tea time, right? But Dr. Meena has our experience to share, and then the team that has come from Kolkata, just to share how we integrate all these things into something deliverable with amazing results. So this is why we thought that the best thing would be that whoever wants tea can have their tea and come back and listen to our discussion and talk. So without much ado, from one pioneering activity from India to another one that Dr. Meenakshi Chintapalli is doing back in the USA as part of our Indian Physicians Association, it would be a lovely thing to have her and listen to her experience before we move on to our Indian experience of delivering all these things, putting all these complexities together, how we deliver those things very short and sharply, for which our team will present and then we will talk about it. So without much ado, let us have Dr. Meenakshi Chintapalli, her slides and her online connections. So can you have Meenakshi ma'am?
Namaste, Bhattarji. I think I'm controlling the slides here.
Yeah, good.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
And can you see the screen? Is there a projection of the screen over there?
We can see the screen, yeah.
Okay. I thank you, the Apollo Group, particularly Dr. Sangeeta Reddy, Dr. Ravindra Babu, Anupam Sibal, Anjan Bhattacharjee, Jagdish, to give me this opportunity. Feel flattered. My journey in this early brain network started in '79 with the Brazelton scales and touch points and Dr. Moni's literature on how the stress caused a global developmental delay and how nurture improved. And then I self-educated myself over the evolving literature. My books have about 156 neuro references from Chugani and so on. So without much ado, for human excellence to develop with the character as well as the intellectual ability and to withstand the 5 domains of health, holistic health assurance, as well as giving 4 domains of learning. We don't have much time. It is 0 to 3 years, 90%, 0 to 5 years, 100%, lifetime robust primary health network. If they are weak, then the rest of the networks are going to cause shakiness and some deficiency or the other. And there are many factors other than the parent and the competencies or a caregiver competencies and the environment that is conducive to bring about the development. So our aim is to talk about the most opportune time for the lifetime structural and functional pathways through neuroplasticity. And the objective is about understanding some Bayesian principles of multisensory integration, sensory nurture, the nature, and the responsive caregiving and positive attachment for foundational for the primary pathways. And having used this knowledge, we should be able to prevent and reverse all potential neurodevelopmental disorders by understanding what we can do. The terminology has changed and more we are into the allele formation, chromosomal microarray, biomarkers at a cellular, molecular, genetic level, hair cortisol level, and neurobiology. And most of the diagnosis of the psychiatric conditions in the past like schizophrenia and bipolar depression are now considered, because of the acceptance by the global world, that they are neurodevelopmental disorders that are very straining. Autism takes about $35 billion a year trying to give therapies. Opioid crisis, which has its foundation 0 to 5 years, causes $85 billion, and so on. And in the listing I see there, the most common disorders that were kept. We are at a tipping point where before COVID, 40% of the youth by 19 years have had 1 or 2 mental disorders. Now that has gone up to 64 to 70% because of the pandemic and the uncertainty in life and the increased abuse when there is social distancing maintained and not being able to go to school. 22% have had severe impairment where that drains the community, the family. One disability is enough to drain the whole family and the population. 1 out of 4 have behavioral disorders by 13 years of age, and 1 out of 12 have substance use disorder by 15 years of age. Adverse child experiences, which is 2 to 3 that causes the trauma development disorder by 16 years of age. 48% of the population between 18 to 34 years have undergone physical aggression, toxic stress and ACE, are raising kids with 1 or 2 mental disorders. Autism last year has been recognized to gone up from 1 in 59 in 2019 to 1 in 44 right now. And there is more aggression, and the second leading cause of death is suicide among the youth under 18 years. How can we assure this positive growth mindset? How can we lift people from the fixed mindset? Also a Stanford research product, and this is in the hands of the caretaker, who the universe, the creation, the God has created the brain of a pregnant woman, and I couldn't do anything other than illustration, but I gave plenty of references at the end of the slides, has produced oxytocin to bond with the infant. And that's from nucleus accumbens, as well as in the prefrontal cortex and ventral tegmentus nucleus. But what happens in global anxiety disorder and maternal depression, postpartum depression and manic depressive disorder, that some majority of the people are growing, because 1 out of 4 have neuropsychological problems and developmental disorders. Then the whole thing has shifted to not bonding because limbic system took over. And at length, Dr. Sharmila and Dr. Jagdish have talked about so much of epigenetics and early development, and I don't have time to go into the development and the 4 developmental domains. Each one of them is 1.5 hour lecture and symposium workshop for me. The epigenetics have been known since 2000s, and Eric Korchesny has identified APO1 and APO2 cells, and in APO1 that is so prenatal, it depends upon the environment again and the lifestyle practices, environmental toxins, food choices that parent makes, stress, ACEs, toxic stress, so many other things that are causing an 800 allele formation that he documented, whereas they are through the RNA transcription, whether they penetrate to the DNA to express the gene or not to express the gene is dependent upon, again, on the APO2, the postpartum environment and the caretaker competencies. All the purple are prenatal, all the greens are postnatal. These pluripotent cells have to differentiate, they have to migrate, they have to create synaptic formation, function the synaptic formation, glial controls and regulators, GABAergic fibers, axonal proliferation, dendritic proliferation. Everything is dependent upon these regulator cells and the epigenetic factors and the caretaker responsive caretaking that can decide whether the gene gets expressed or not. Here is a visual picture. If methionine is in the diet, methylation process prevents genetic transcription to be transferred to DNA, and genes do not get expressed. Whereas a bad gene can get expressed if there is acetylation formation at the histone tail end radical. I cannot go deep into this one. Multisensory integration, I want you to understand for a moment, is when somebody is bouncing a ball, your visual spatial coordination, your auditory spatial coordination, your motor coordination, your motor power strength, and your visual coordination and your auditory coordination, all these are four bound together to form an amodal messaging system in the brain. It is amazing that it started prenatally and it continues postnatally. I don't have time and space to talk about that. Then I want people to read about the soft boundaries, hard boundaries, and event formations. For the episodic memory to procedural and declarative memory, it is very, very important because we are the only ones in the whole creation who have an orbital, the prefrontal cortex that sits on the orbits, which is not in the creation. Anything that disturbs the pathways to go to the neocortex are responsible for neurodevelopmental disorders. And beyond our control is deep-rooted community adverse effects, migrant population, lack of opportunities to stay at one place, hand-to-mouth existence. Whatever we talk about, that cannot be delivered to everybody. But within the population, because 1 out of 4 have so many disorders, they resort to alcohol, substance use, opioids. There is more incarceration for either for the drugs or for rape victims, or for witnessing family violence or domestic violence, intimate partner violence, for family problems. Above all this is the electronics that affects, without not following the Bayesian principles of hands-on relational bonding and working out, they cause Q and cause is not there. So it does prevent the axonal proliferation, although it overstimulates the nerves. All of this, what is happening, and we knew about it even in HPA axis and the stressor response. It's the catecholamines and the cortisol. Cortisol, gram per gram, burns the cells, whether it is a muscle cell or any systems in the body. First of all, we have all these neurodevelopmental disorders because of burning of the neocortex. With the Sakatobo syndrome, with cardiomyopathy, where kids are dropping down, even if they do physical fitness programs with a lot of stress, it is causing a reversible cardiomyopathy. They're dropping dead at 20 years to 64 years from stress. In the stomach, it is causing not only the mental disorders we are talking about, physical disorders of gastric ulcerations, irritable bowel syndrome, gluconeogenesis, fatty degeneration of the liver, non-alcoholic cirrhosis of the liver, diabetes mellitus with the acanthosis nigricans and obesity. Immune response, always immune deregulation happens because of the stress hormones. Although it is good for relieving some of the pains of the immunological disorders, it does suppress the regulator cells that can prevent cancer. And many kids with the ASD or ADHD have asthma and allergic rhinitis and rheumatoid arthritis kind of a problems. And besides the hypertension from the adrenals, sexual dysfunction, encopresis, enuresis, which are usual comorbid conditions in kids who have been exposed to ASS and trauma. So the fright and flight reaction needs to be undone from the day one the infant is born in a dyadic way between the mother and the child and with the family cooperation. Electronics, here is a very well-defined organ, very well-nurtured child, but has taken to gaming, Wuhan study, much quoted and very well designed study. The frontal cortex sloughs out with 3 hours per week of electronic gaming. All dopamine is depleted. And then the positive reward system is being replaced by the limbic system of negative reward system. And there is a prune of a brain where is the scarring and degeneration, where children lose their memory, they lose their motivation, and 14 neuropsychiatric conditions, including ADHD, OCD, depression, bipolar depression to schizophrenia, and seizures have happened because of the gaming, even after well-connected brain. Stephanie Amy's shed some light on comparing the ADHD and ASD with the normal brain through the voxel-based flow anesometry studies, where they can measure the volume of the axonal fibers in the myelin sheaths. It is sad to say, in a normal control where there is a right and brain left connected, very well connected, and through the genitourospleenium, here in ASD, there is no connection there through the genitourospleenium. There are no fibers between the occipital to the frontal, parieto-frontal, temporofrontal, occipitotemporal, and occipitoparietal. Everything has been disturbed, and that where neurochemicals are secreted. This is ASD, you cannot see it. Something is blocking over there. And this is ADHD compared with a control, ADHD compared with the OCD. OCD is a later development disorder. So there is a good perfusion, although they have many features of the neurodevelopmental disorders, neurobiological developmental disorders. So that makes us think that the roots for ASD and AHD are not psychiatric conditions, but neurobehavioral from the neurodevelopmental dysregulation, disorganization. The same thing, the scan, you cannot see the OCD. You can see OCD, but you cannot see the ASD on the top. I don't know if the screen is okay on the other side. AHD, there is scarring. There is no perfusion. So here are 100 billion cells, 250,000 per minute times 10,000 synaptic connections. Once the experience is received in a state of bonding, security, attachment, safety, and trust. Once that is failing here, you can catch red flags between 1 month to 3 months, and you can intercept it, intervene, so that there is a smooth transition to the amygdala and the uncus. And social brain connects by 6 months of age, when separation and stranger anxiety starts. Where there is a caretaker response here, parent has to change the role to become a teacher, just like becoming a counselor after the third birthday or so. If during this time there is no relational bonding and interpersonal activity, there is no procedural memory because there is no cue and cause, and it is another completely different topic for me on multisensory integration. Now, American Academy of Pediatrics and the Board of Education, United States, as well as the UNICEF, as well as the Indian government, want to catch the red flags, and we want to catch them at 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 15 months, 18 months, and undo what is going on through physical therapy, occupational therapy, play therapy, AVA therapy, and so on. Speech therapy, first of all. But when you look at this scarring, just to have an example, a very well child who goes in a hierarchical fashion from brainstem to the frontal cortex is not a problem. They're very complacent, they follow the rules, and that can be given to every infant. But here is the scarred brains where there is deficiency of all the neurohormones, including serotonin, dopamine, as well as melatonin. Sleep disorders are very common in neurobehavioral disorders. These are scarred brains. And there is a quantitative deficiency that make them resort to substance abuse when they are teenagers. And here is some example. This was a 2005 statement, and I created my own curriculum with the multisensory integration between 1980s to 2003. And my first book was published with the curriculum for the in a dyadic way to unlearn the parents' learning and to teach them what they should learn and work with the children with activities. So I want to skip this in respect for time. He was a kid who saw violence in terms of yara, yara, yara fighting. It was not even physical abuse. And he withdrew his senses. And then he developed ADHD, ODD, PTSD. He was on a lot of toxic medicines. I had to teach him through experience-dependent pathways to connect back. He was 19 years old. He came to me when he was 13 years old. And it can be done. But what can be accomplished here is rich, robust pathways, broad bands for a digital analog through the senses. If the brain is a digital analog, you cannot match it. There could be recidivism here, but he did fine. Here is the whole picture of the parent caretakers' skills, strategies, all through the day, through play, through the routines, through the activities. She's going to give language. She's going to give social emotional development. She's going to give physical fitness and well-being using all the VAC, 5 senses. She's also going to give STEM skills. And this is a work in progress. And then activities need to be done. Parents need to be taught. Take 6 minutes with each well child care visit. Within the 15 visits by 5 years, you have created a genius. And geniuses are created, we prevent illness. And every child has something to be giving back to the society. No child should be left behind. You see the interaction. You see the child is looking up to somebody. There is happiness in him, happiness in the mother, secure attachment, where there is emotional trust and bonding and an internal relaxation which infant can learn. What happens here? It could be, she could be looking at an iPad. She could be looking at what happened to my life. I lost my income. The baby is crying and there is no interaction. Insecure attachment right after birth, where that can cause confusion, avoidance, disorganization, and ambivalence. These children will not bond. They will withdraw their senses. They will withdraw their vision, hearing. They don't know how to close their ears. So they kill 600,000 cells per minute times 10,000 synaptic connections. When this happens right after birth, postpartum depression is 1 in 5 common, very common. And we are not catching that. And people like me who talk the truth always stand against the crowd. Yadharthavardi, Sangha Virodhi. It was an uphill battle, but I could accomplish what I did. What happens to the child? This is the child. He's confused. He doesn't know where he belongs. Should I learn? Should I not learn? Should I depend upon the caretaker? Should I not depend upon the caretaker? Who is going to teach me language? Who is going to take care of my needs? So we need every practice to become a medical home so that the kids can come and there is a family-centeredness. We do every attempt to prevent the physical, behavioral, and mental health disorders. We offer education, anticipatory guidance with informed, neurocognitive science informed curriculum. And I'm not bragging about myself. I developed a curriculum. I published 3 books. There is an activity for each well child care visit. We catch the red flags. We catch the red flags and bring it to the attention of the parent. Be a bad news bearer, but get a little heat, but don't lose your love and compassion. Develop interdisciplinary specialty, if it is possible, at major centers like Apollo, where you go from one to the next psychologist, neuropsychologist who could do on baby scales. Whereas in interdisciplinary multi-specialty team effort, you lose time. You lose time unless you're willing to use web and Zoom sessions and get paid for that. PCP is the primary care pediatrician, or the family care doctor is the turf holder to prevent chronic problems physically, mentally, and behaviorally. We are trying to stabilize the biological unit of the society, as in Yuri Bronfenbrenner's eco-biological system. It is the infant with the family, with the schools, with the community, with the faith systems, with the toys that are purchased, the micro and the mesosystems together are a biological unit. Even if the exosystem and the chronosystem do cause problems. The macro system that is the employment, job, war, disasters. This family unit, once there is love, care, reciprocity, that can be prevented. If the biological physiological needs are met, there is safety and security in every child. This is Maslow's pyramid, and I love to show this because everything is interdependent. It's a cascading effect. When there is a safety and security, your social relationships are pro-social with the family members, with the community, with the society, with the friends, with the peer group, with the teachers, with authority. Self-esteem improves, self-confidence improves, self-activation, actualization happens. It is a cascading relationship with the policymakers, where the parents take care of the infants and the parents are cared by the policymakers, and infant mental health is at a tipping point. We are in a crisis right now. And when there is a medical home that is especially made for early child development center, first 1,000 days, where it starts with every care from the prenatal with the OBGYN, comprehensive coordinated effort, and it is family centered, where we take a family member, we educate the family members. There is a continuous support either online or through tracking, and it is easily accessible. It is a compassionate service where you build the trust and the parent also builds a trust with you, inclusive of all categories, even the poor. Only not the rich get the help. So where do we start? Have a relationship with the OBGYNs and start prenatally talking about healthy eating habits, yoga, exercise, diet, and breastfeeding, and teach them about neuroplasticity, teach them about epigenetics at the lay person level, and talk about what they should not do, and review with them periodically with every visit. What if we say, every person, every provider, every pediatrician, every practitioner is aware of neuroplasticity and the relationship of the environment, food, gut, brain relationship, and immunity relationship, and how they can control the neuroinflammation, prevention and treatment of mental illness by catching them early and let it not go beyond the 3rd birthday and reverse them. Every practice can offer this education, 5 to 6 minutes if they are thorough about it, and it shouldn't take long. And that's what I did in my primary care practice. And we had to be so proactive to stop this calamity, the tsunami of the mental disorders, where people either taking guns and shooting 4 or 5 places a day, particularly in the United States. Pediatricians not accepting the neuroplasticity because they're getting enough money to run their family. They're asking, why do I need to know about the first 1,000 days? But that needs to be stopped. We need to put this curriculum through middle school, 5th grade, middle school, high school, every teacher, every Anganwadi, every ASHA worker, every primary healthcare provider, every pediatrician. There is no excuse if you don't really step in and put an end through early child development center, where the first 1,000 days clinic is going to assure human excellence in 5 domains of health: physical, spiritual, intellectual, psychosocial, and emotional, and wellness. Whereas the 4 domains of health are not just the 4 domains, they have subdomains. And each one takes me 1.5 hours of workshop, where there is an activity that is designated that can be done through daily routine play, interaction, and activity, and not like you can give anything. You borrow the adult brain to teach the infant everything, so that the trajectory of development is 3,000 words by the 3rd birthday, and 200 to 1,000 words by the 2nd birthday. Sentence construction very well by 18th month. So I have faced this one, that my child had it later on. Don't break the bones of the baby. Don't do this tummy times, the neck will break. This is what the grandmother's reaction is. You have to undo their learning. They have to unlearn what they learned. Health and fitness, gross motor, fine motor coordination, immunizations, growth velocity, physical fitness, nutrition and safety, the rainbow of eating where all the micronutrients also go is very, very important. These are xanthines, mesoxanthines, leptins, luteins, antioxidants. And I used to specify what foods the parents can give. How many do really take care of that with the quinoa and millets and everything when they start weaning by 6 months? There is a reason why we need to do that. They are tyrosine precursors, they're methionine precursors, dopamine precursors. Social emotional learning has to assure self-awareness, emotional intelligence of knowing their emotions, regulating them, and tuning into the other's emotions. Pro-social behaviors and emotional trust and security, first of all, then self-regulation is so important. Language, receptive language, expressive language, and it is going, the thematic presentation is growing. If one person speaks one language, the infant will, and the other person speaks another language, they can learn 5 languages because it is a thematic presentation to the brain, and there will be a confusion if one person speaks Hindi, English, Bengali together. So expressive, receptive, emergent literacy where print has a meaning, and this meaning makes me read. So they learn to read and they read to learn. This is a transition that rapidly happens from early Head Start programs that in the United States, where from 0 to 3 years, the teachers are trained to deliver this. They could be the only mentor when when 2 parents are running away for work. But every nanny or a babysitter, every grandmother need to also learn this. Cognitive development is not just the STEM skills of science, technology, and mathematics. We want to work on their memory, thinking, reasoning, imitation, role play, problem solving, tolerance. Everything is taught through play. That's one of the reasons you can look it up. Lego Foundation is paying $140 million that will be given to 5 people to develop a curriculum through multisensory integration through play. So here is a very low birth weight infant, 25 weeks at birth, 1 pound 2 ounces who went down to 1 pound or less, daily transfusions, BPD grade 3, intraventricular hemorrhages grade 4, retinopathy of prematurity, right side bleeding where he needed surgery, he was blind. He was discharged with oxygen cylinder. They said he had 3 types of meningitis: Haemophilus influenza, viral meningitis, candida, sepsis, and meningitis also. He was treated. He was in the hospital for not 3 months, but 5 months. I took it up on myself to be the advocate through early child intervention programs that are available through government funding, ECI, and Easter seals. But in those days, there is no ABA therapy, social skills training program, but just bare PT, OT, and speech therapy. But I did the mommy daddy therapy where I taught them about networks. I taught them about the food-gut-brain relationship. This kid never received any antibiotics, and he came when he was 21, completing grad school.
Ma'am, sorry to interrupt. We can't hear the video, ma'am.
So that was the father, and this is the mother who came, brought him. He completed master's in computer sciences. he's a math intelligent, and I'm kind of shifting. Let me go to the next one. 16q deletion syndrome. She came to me 8 months before this recording. She was non-verbal. She was in a gaze. She was totally, and she was so much into electronics, even by the therapist. And I had to put a stop, and I wrote a note to the therapist not to use electronics. And she mainstreamed into the classroom 2 years after this. And she was autistic, non-verbal autistic when she came to me. So she moved on to having a good speech, and then she went into mainstream classroom by the 5th grade. Wonderful miracles that can happen when parents are the therapists 24/7, 365. Although you get physical therapy, occupational therapy, she was getting ABA therapy, and she had good Humana insurance. This guy is the father of a girl, similar history like Alfred Gutierrez. She even had a vancomycin 10 times the dose was given. She had a cardiac arrest. She was resuscitated for 3 minutes. She has a right leptomeningeal, huge leptomeningeal cyst. Even a neurosurgeon didn't want to touch that because I worked on the networks, 70 billion or 60 billion that were there. And she is amazing. That's her. She's an RN right now. She wants to go into nurse practitioner class. Yeah, he was a 5.5-year-old, 100% autistic, non-verbal, no emotional control, got kicked out of Head Start programs. School, elementary school said we can deal with him because he would lie down on the floor and cry for about 45 minutes nonstop. He would go under the sinks, underneath the table. That's how he came to me at 5 years of age. And that's him at 18 years of age. You cannot understand mother. She doesn't have English. So she describes how he was nonverbal. He was in a fog. Here is a kid who came to me when his baby sister came to me a year prior to this. He was already going to different pediatricians. When I saw him, I wanted to do Fragile X syndrome test. Mother did not agree because it was $4,000, and then insurance won't cover it. And then I worked with her on the brain networks, neuroplasticity, environmental structure, diet, meal plan, and spelled out each activity for her for 4 domains of learning. As you see, you can see that he still has some problem with the articulation disorder. He has been in speech therapy, but mom doesn't go for therapy. She does take care of him at home, even if we give, because she's got a little one and she feels it inconvenient, and she has put in a lot of effort. He was counting. A Williams syndrome, I saw him at 18 months. I told the family that he needed therapies. He needed the chromosomes. They never did go. They saw my nurse practitioner who was trained. And so I saw him again, caught him at 3 years, and I said, he's a full-blown autistic. He's not making eye contact. He doesn't have any speech. And he has got Williams syndrome and a cardiac problem. And then they were very upset. They're Arabic, and so they brought an Arabic translator. I explained every single thing, and this is the result within a year or two. He speaks both Arabic and English.
చేయి పడుతుంది చేయి చెప్పులు వేసుకురా
So guys, I'm not here to talk today about each sensory issue. Now, autism is just a spectrum. Most of the neurodevelopmental disorders are not a single entity, but it has its roots, etiopathologies, in the primary brain pathways upon which the secondary brain pathways have established. And we have to get it all under control under 60 months so that the communities and the families do not strain themselves. One developmental disorder is enough to disturb everybody in the family. And it's an economic drain. I was informed that in Maharashtra, one speech therapy session is 15,000 rupees. How many people can afford for that? So let us all really do something for the world and set an example by creating this early child development center where there is a boss who is developed in early child interventions, a pediatrician who is capable of keeping the training and the framework and the infrastructure going with the inclusion criteria of labor class as well as the poor, and somebody who is knowledgeable in nutrition and how to stimulate the senses and spell the activities, because a therapist once a week is not enough. It is the parent who has to become floor time, face time, a linguist, abilities, committed to do the work, or the extended family member. The model that we have for a medical home is Massachusetts, where a red flag is picked up. Immediately a phone call is made to the interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary panel, and a response within a phone communication or a Zoom communication is expected within 30 minutes, 95% satisfaction from the customers. And they created a ministry for counseling who follows up with each one of them. It is not a physician who is required to really track the red flags, do the observation list. I think I have shared a sample with Dr. Jagdish on the milestones updated even by the CDC. Center for Disease Control has to update it. Where I train nurse practitioners and RN who can be trained to do these before a physical checkup done by the physician and give the tracking ASQ 3, ASQ SE, or a milestone checklist, observation toolkit, where there is a satisfaction, for each domain there is one. So every visit, and if there is any question, you bring them back within a week or 2 weeks and do the checklist and give some activities. In CHOP, Children's Hospital of Pennsylvania, they have school readiness counselors who are mid-level, either nurse practitioners or mostly RNs who are taught how to do the screening, give the report to the physician in these behavioral disorders or the red flags, and build a relationship with the customer to follow up on phone. In primary care practices like mine, I did the nurse practitioners. I had a protocol. They have to follow the discussion. And that's how my books came into vogue, where I told them, follow the book, do what I talk about in newborn development and care and preparation of the newborn. When the infant comes for a 2-day checkup, 1-month checkup, look at the, we do PHQ-9, immediately the first entry of the mother, somebody fills it for her, or she could fill it online. There is a web, there is a online that we could use a lot. And mid-level professionals who are trained are very good in tracking these red flags and reporting. So immediate intervention where it is needed, whether it is language acquisition, whether there are social determinants that have changed from the time they entered your clinic, you can take care of them. There is a planning that is required. There is a coordination that is required. And I have the resources I can share if this is going to go forward. A call, so there are 3 models. One is a referral model where there is a behavioral health specialist, therapist. They are not in the PCP office. PCP is not in their office. So it is through phone conversation. There is always a delay. Co-located, they go from one room to the other. They get it done. It's possible at Apollo, and the Apollo could become the tertiary facility where their other hospitals can send, and every quarterly they could be followed up, whereas the pediatricians taking care also need to be trained, as well as the nurse practitioners or the nurses there. So we can create an institute where multisensory integration is robust, based upon the Bayesian statistics and principles of sensory binding, in a state of trust, security, safety, relational bonding with the parent and the caretaker, and the caregiver or the infant, it could be grandmother, it could be Aya, it could be Anganwadis. Anganwadis can be trained. They are at a beginner level. There is an intermediate level. There is a advanced level. So various categories. I've written everything for everybody. ACEs should be prevented. We have to unlearn what has been learned, and that is a uphill battle. I have this grid that really works. It's a cognitive behavior modification therapy for self-care, self-confidence, yoga, and meditation. Ames did the study, Hartzell did the study from Harvard. Why do we not teach our kids to chant Om Bhurbhuva Swaha? It is not a godly thing. There is no God that is being praised. It only says the effulgence has to illumine my brain so I can be worthwhile instrument in the whole creation. And so the yoga, the meditation, the mindfulness, Jyoti meditation, guided imagery, I call it in Western world, the activities, the stories, read along 4 to 5 books by 6 months. Teach alphabets and the sounds and make association between apple, apron, acorn, B, broccoli, C, cup, D, ball. You know, they have to feel things and it's going in bottom up, top down is going to be spit out in wonderful ways. Meditation makes the left brain prefrontal cortex very active. I did this with the school where ADHD kids, bilingual kids are much far behind than the ADHD kids. They came and caught up to the average just on the basis of positive thinking, life application of positive thinking, declaration forms given to the parents to enact at home the same thing that is going at school, wrote lesson plans where we part character development with the life application. Every ADHD child wanted to do the music therapy with the breathing exercise to calm themselves down. And this was the result. They moved up in their scores. A child was failing the national standard test every year, but that year when we entered, he passed. So I'm here for questions. I'm not here to talk about these are the most common intellectual disabilities. Now we don't call it as a disability, it is a different ability. We want to give them access. We want to give them practice. We want to support their practice. It is the same thing for the newborn too. Mother gets the skills taught. She scaffolds the learning. She models the learning. And I cannot go beyond because Dr. Jagdish and Sharmila have talked about it. So we have universal hearing screen for the children. And we pick up and every ear infection. I did the acoustic reflectometry. That is not a common practice, unfortunately. And so everything helps. Everything really helps the child. Any questions? I'm stopped sharing the screen and I want to be in the full screen. Is there anybody hearing or everybody left?
Ma'am, we are all there.
Nobody's there?
We are all there.
You're all there. No questions? No question as you can challenge me.
Because of the time.
I showed examples.
I think we are expecting other speakers to finish. Other speakers are going to finish first, and after that we will do question and answer.
Okay, fine enough. I'm not bragging about myself. I have 3 books with the curriculum. I just had to show, even when there was no ABA therapy, we could reverse and we could work with the development of this.
ABA, we have similar results, and how we achieve that. That is why I think you and I are actually coming together on this platform, so that we can deliver that to every child of at least our country, and if necessary any other country, right? So this is the main issue at this stage. So that is why I think these experiences needed to be shared. We had a lot of technical issues today, which is very unfortunate, but this is not the end of the whole thing. So I'm very thankful to you that you have shown such wonderful cases. And what we are trying to show is that, this is possible. So there is a lot of science behind it, which also you touched upon. Dr. Pravin Kherkar has also mentioned about this, neurobiology that is very important. It's the science that is also very important behind all these things that we do. These are not airy-fairy things. So this is a very, very central message. We know what a hard work this is, but what we are trying to say is that it is all possible. Be it in the state, be it in India, be it anywhere, somebody doing the things in the correct way, not doing overstimulation, not doing understimulation, doing the right sort of scientific stimulation at the right time, especially during the first 1,000 days, is going to create magic. And that is exactly what we want to do everywhere. Just like you were saying, and Apollo becomes the tertiary care center. This is very nice for a country like ours to actually achieve these things for all child, leaving no children behind and touching lives. So this is exactly where we want to go, ma'am. So we'll have the question and answer later because we will need to do a lot of that. But we will invite our next speaker to do that. I hand over my mic to Dr. Jagadi.
Yeah. Good afternoon. I'm going to introduce Dr. Pranati. She's a pediatric neurologist. Dr. Pranati Gupta. She's going to talk about the pediatric neurologist and the developmental pediatricians. First slide, please.
Yes, sir.
Introduction. Yeah. She has received a pediatric training in the United Kingdom for 9.5 years. And developmental pediatrics, she did from Dartford, Gravesham, and Stanley PCT, Kent, United Kingdom. And neonatology and neonatal neurology and neurodevelopment from Hammersmith Hospital, NHS Trust, London. Pediatric neurology and neurorehabilitation from Great Ormond Street Hospital for Children, NHS Trust, London. I welcome Dr. Pranati Gupta. Please take over session. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jagdish, and thank you, Dr. Anjali and Apollo Group for inviting me to talk on this difficult topic. Very tricky for a pediatric neurologist. Pediatric neurologists are not developmental pediatrics. And I'll say why that is to and fro. Next slide, please. So just a bit about definitions. What is a pediatric neurologist? It's a subspecialty in pediatrics. A doctor with expertise in diagnosing and managing the vast range of neurological conditions that are affecting children and young people. They work closely with other neurodisability pediatricians, neurosurgeons, and other complementary therapists. This is the RCPCH definition. Next slide, please. The development of pediatrics, according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, is a subspecialty in pediatrics. It's care for children from birth through young adulthood and along the continuum, including those suspected of, at risk, and or known to have a developmental and behavioral disorder. It's an interdisciplinary field integrating psychology, pediatrics, and related disciplines. Next slide, please. The development in pediatrics is application of science to development and behavioral problems that present in the pediatric settings. It's more of prevention and supportive health education and some prescriptive treatments. Next slide, please. What about the child psychiatry? Because this comes in India as well. They do treat children and young people up to the age of 18 years with a range of medical and mental health conditions like autism spectrum disorder, depression, OCDs, and all. They do provide supportive health education and a lot of prescription. So there is a gap in the healthcare from a pediatrician, a primary pediatrician, to a neurologist
or a psychiatrist. So who's going to fill up this gap? That's where we saw that the developmental pediatricians can now fill up this gap. A vast range of developmental and behavioral problems. They are very difficult to pick up in a routine pediatric practice. There are routine behavioral problems like temper tantrums, eating problems, fussy eating, etc. Behavioral problems that have a significant medical dimension and medical problems that have a significant behavioral dimension. They are high frequency problems, but low intensity problems. That's why they do not get the attention that they deserve. And they are very responsive to the treatments. Prescriptive treatment here, I mean, is therapeutic treatments and not medical treatments. Next slide, please. So the pediatrician in India, most of the 50% of the pediatric care involve behavioral problems. But do our pediatricians have that much time? Medical issues take the precedence. Almost an average pediatrician spends about 5 to 10 minutes, and the development goes back. The training, do our pediatricians get trained like in the West? In America, I think they do spend about a month in developmental pediatrics, but whereas in the United Kingdom, before we do the MRCPCH, all of us have to rotate for 6 months through developmental pediatrics, and during a subspecialization CCT, we have to spend another 6 months. So it's about a total of 1 year. And during a pediatric training as well, during general pediatrics and neonatal pediatrics, we have to do neurodevelopmental clinics for neonatology, CP clinics, all those are done by the pediatricians. So there are a lot of exposure for pediatricians. And do the pediatricians have the inclination to sort out these behavioral and developmental problems? They went through rigorous medical training, and they want to practice medicine and not deal with behavioral difficulties. And so that is where we are in India. So that is where is the gap. So how is this gap going to be filled is what the question is. As a neurologist, I would like to deal with medical conditions like epilepsy. I do want to know about the development of the child because these epilepsy and other conditions do have an impact on the development of the child. I do want to inquire and see where it is. But then I do not want to go more in depth because my medical treatment would be diluted. It will not be taken seriously. And I have seen that as with my vast developmental experience and neurological experience, my consultations go on for 45 minutes to 1 hour, a lot of the times. And most of it, it's not medical conditions, but it's all about the development and mostly about food and sleep disorders. These take up a lot of time and toileting. Next slide, please. And what is the role of mental health professionals? Parents don't want to go there unless they absolutely need to and really need a lot of push. A pediatrician is better, they feel, rather than a mental health professional. A lot of stigma around it. And they also construct that they work with is a psychopathology. So in order to do that, they have to label the child as mentally ill. But these children are not mentally ill. It is a part of the development that is a slightly disruptive, a little bit deranged, which can be corrected with timely interventions. So that's where we are struggling here. So a lot of child psychiatrists and psychiatrists take over as well. And this gap really needs to be filled in India. Next slide, please. Previous slide. So my journey and challenges as a neurologist in India, where did I start? I've been in India for the last 8 years, and I have seen this gap. Initially in my practice, when I was doing only neurology, I would look after these children, the medical needs, and then who's going to look after the developmental needs? There was nobody at that point. This was almost 11 years ago. None of the schools were accepting these children. We've come a long way, but then none of the children were accepted in schools. There was no awareness of neurorehabilitation and more so about the benefits of neurorehabilitation. These children were said to be left alone. Don't spend your money, don't spend your energies. They're not going to improve. And we have to really prove that they do improve with early intervention. There's no awareness of developmental screening, either formal or informal. A lot of these children would go to developmental centers where they would be seen by a therapist or a psychologist or whoever is in charge of that, but no documentation at all. And so many times when we ask for documentation, we don't want to duplicate the questions because we will get a wrong answer, a trained answer. So it will bias our decisions. And they also were thinking that there is not much scope for these children to develop, even if there is not much can be done, and also quite expensive. It was a very difficult and an uphill task. And for high-risk infants, this is for normal children, and for high-risk infants, I was working for a neonatal hospital. They did not have any integrated pathways. They were running neurodevelopmental clinics, but then there was no pathway. There was no structure to it. I would get reference only if the child had a motor disorder and not anything else. I was going there as not as a pediatric neurologist, but as a developmental pediatrician because there was nobody at that time in the city of Hyderabad. So I had to fill up this gap because it was so important that these children be picked up early. And no designated neurodevelopmental clinics. None of the neonatal units have a neurodevelopmental clinic. A lot of them. Even Apollo does not have neurodevelopmental clinics. And these infants were left alone. And we would pick them up at 2-3 years. And it was so difficult. At one point, I said, I just need a small room so that an early interventionist would come and start. Let's start the therapy in the neonatal unit. And I wasn't given an opportunity. It was so painful at that point that it was like, what am I going to do? And also the roles of different complementary medical staff. A lot of pediatricians at that time did not know the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist. And other ancillary staff as well, occupational therapists, they have never heard. So how are we going to convince these pediatricians about what to do and what needs to be developed? So these all could have been taken by the developmental pediatrician. So I started a child development center because I struggled for almost 6 years with a complementary medical staff. So the challenges that some of these CDCs had was they started mostly by the therapists, psychologists, no documented evaluations, not even one documented evaluation, and they would prescribe everyday therapies. The child had to come in every day, and if they were poor or outstation, they would stay in the city for 3 months, 6 months, God knows how many days. They have to go everywhere. No awareness of training the parents, no awareness of home programs, minimal transdisciplinary communication. So between a therapist, there was no communication at all. The physiotherapist would work separately, the psychologist would work separately, occupational therapist would work separately, and they all would be doing something similar, duplication. It was quite difficult, and there was absolutely no teamwork. Next slide, please. And what are the challenges that I faced with the parents? Difficulty to accept the diagnosis, denial, and late identification and seeking help late. Even if identified, the family would say, grandparents would say, they would walk. Forget about the grandparents. The pediatricians would say, no, forget about it. They can talk until 2 years. It's still time. And compliance issues with the therapies. That is a major issue that I have seen. And with the denial, valuable time is lost. We're all talking about the early intervention, and then time is brain, and we are losing the brain. And most of these mothers knew that the child was different. But then convince her family, to convince the doctor, and come through the developmental pediatrician took a long time. And not much emotional support for her, neither is a social support, nor is a financial support. So it was a situation was quite weak in the beginning, actually. Next slide, please. I was just thinking about that time. So I referred to one child development center, a 13-year-old, who wasn't even able to indicate toilet. And that was a bit absurd for me. A 13-year-old child not indicating toilet was not acceptable at all for me. So I called up and said, this child was not instructed on toilet training and he's been attending your therapy centers. Then the therapist says, madam, the parents never asked for that. I said, well, being the therapist, you work in partnership with the parents and decide what is best for the child and the family and guide them. What is the priority for the child? So, I mean, I have a lot of hitting against walls, a lot of walls. Then I thought this is not going to go anywhere. And then I started my own child development center along with my friends from here. So we started on how to overcome so much situations. The therapies are expensive, they cannot come regularly. Compliance is a major issue. So how am I going to come up with this? I started the home programs. I wanted to explore the neuroplasticity in the early years in a place which is comfortable for the child. And it also reduces the time spending going to therapy sessions. A lot of time. The mother would have only 1 or 2 hours in a day for the me time or whatever she wanted to do. And that time was spent in traveling and tiredness after that. And child, both the parent, family, everybody was tired. And also this it increased the contact with the healthcare professional and the other children. The child would not cooperate in the therapy room at the time that they were either made to wait, or if they missed a session, they were not given a session for that day. And so with this, the contact with the healthcare professionals increased. And because these children are at risk of having more development, more of respiratory infections, they will get an infection. And whatever work we have done made the child forward, the child was static. And economical as well. The home therapies I thought was economical because we would give 1 session a week or in 15 days, depending on what the parents could afford and what they could do and what was necessary. And especially for outstation parents, this worked out the best. Next, please. So what is the evidence for the home programs? There's high quality evidence, 2 RCTs and a lot of other studies. Home programs are effective compared to no intervention. Self-care and motor abilities have improved because self-care skills can be administered only at home and not in therapy centers. And they need guidance and hand-holding, at least remote guidance they need. And goal-directed training was very effective. We would not select a lot of goals, 1 or 2 goals to work on at home. And that worked very well. Children using home programs achieved their goals for intervention in a shorter amount of time. This was very surprising than those without. Next slide, please. So most of these home programs worked around activities of daily living. They also improved the inclusion of the child in the community, and they brought about a change, a positive change in the parenting style to manage the child's behavior. Because in the therapy center, not all children manifest. You close them in a room, lock them with an educated and a therapist who knows how to handle this child. The challenges are very different from the challenges the family faces in the home environment in different triggers. They do have a lot of triggers at home. So how are they going to manage them practically at home? So that helped a lot. So what were the hiccups that I was facing in implementing this home program? The therapist's acceptance initially was very, very, very difficult. They would just not do it. They said, madam, we cannot do it. Parents are butting in, they're interrupting us, they're not listening. They want regular therapies only. And the parental acceptance also. They said, madam, we are not trained. The therapists are more trained. I cannot do it. I want the therapist to train. And another thing was setting realistic expectations. What are they going to expect from the home program? That was also very difficult. And treatment team coordinating only 1 home program. So that coordination was not there initially when I started out. And support from the other family members most of the time dad would not be on the scene. Grandparents, none of them on the scene, only mother was struggling with this. So then we had to recruit the other family members as well. Next slide, please. Next slide. That's it. Okay, I think we missed one slide. So the home programs, we implemented it. We've got a different set of therapists now who are more keen on introducing this to the family. They are very compliant. They listen. They are very open to learning. So they are doing this home programs. We do call them once a week or once in 15 days, depending on the need. And then, also one online consultation we offer for free to check on how the parents are coping and what are the challenges of them. We recommend at least 14 hours per week of home programming. And this saves a lot of time for the parents, and we are seeing amazing results, actually, better than a center induced therapy programs. And I would really like to thank my family, my sister, my brother-in-law, my friends, Linaka and Shweta, for standing by me, believing in me, and for my team, Vasudha, Dinsi, Vani, Soumyakant, and Suruchi, Narayani. We have a team of about 18 who are working closely, and my children and their families and the parents for having trust in me and implementing in this program. And we have treated about almost 3,000 children so far with home programs with amazing results. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kanaki. This is what your approach is: outreach programs by conducting home therapeutic intervention programs. Center-based, home-based therapies. In compare with center-based, home-based therapy is really very successful because the child feels very comfortable in his own environment. Because epigenetics matters there. The child's environment, own environment. So definitely it will yield the results. Thank you so much for your work. And the next speaker is Shreyasri Datta. She's a psychologist, and she's from Child Development Center, Apollo Multi-Specialty Hospital, Calcutta. As a part of the multidisciplinary team for the management of children having various neurodevelopmental disorders, she is providing therapeutic intervention program to the children as well as their parents. And she contributed to the national guidelines for the Cure SMA Foundation India 2020. And top 10 scoring posters in combined Australian ACT-DM IASCD Melbourne Conference 2022 for research on family clustering in children with autism spectrum disorder. And she got the best oral poster award and a winner in the Indian Academy of Pediatrics National Conference for the year 2020 for research on COVID-19, that is on impact on children with autism spectrum disorder, measuring using neurodevelopmental assessment tools. And also she attended conferences and presented research topics and studies topics, abstracts, that too involving children with special difficulties and special needs, like the European Academy of Pediatric Society for the year 2020, European Academy of Childhood Disability for the year 2020, 21, 22, and Indian Academy of Applied Psychology for the year 2021, National Academy of Psychology for the year 2021. I welcome Shreyasri Datta. Thank you very much for coming here. Take care.
Thank you very much, sir, for this lovely introduction. I would request to please change this slide. So my topic is the Kolkata development model. I will be starting with the success of the development model and then explaining you what the model is. The Kolkata development model was presented at the annual EACD, European Academy of Childhood Disability conference in Paris. Dr. Anjan Bhattacharya had presented it with Dr. Lisbeth Sibelius in 2019. It was also presented at the annual RCPCH conference in Glasgow. Next. Dr. Anjan Bhattacharya had presented this model in 2018 at the annual conference of pediatrics and primary healthcare in Paris. I, Shreyashi Datta, had presented this model and studies based on this model in European Academy of Pediatrics in 2020. Apart from this, I have also presented at combined AUS, ACPDM and IACD in 2022 in Melbourne, in NIPIT in March 2021, in Primary Healthcare and Medicare Summit in 2021, and then European Academy of Pediatric Societies in 2020. So we have heard a lot about neurodevelopmental disorders from the respective dignitaries. I would just reiterate on a few important aspects of neurodevelopmental disorders. They cover developmental delays, medical conditions, psychiatric conditions, and congenital conditions. They obviously get managed very well with expert intervention. They need accommodations, but then they are managed with early intervention. They are complex and heterogeneous conditions arising from perturbations of central nervous system which lead to the development of these disorders. Next slide. The impacts of these neurodevelopmental disorders are their development in language and speech, motor skills, attention, behavior, impulse control, emotional expression, memory, learning, and other neurological functions are affected. So what are the solutions? There are so many problems that these children are suffering from. So if we detect early and if we deliver expert early intervention in the 0 to 3 years that the respected dignitaries have mentioned very well, then these children, we can really help them to be saved from this downward spiral with lasting morbidity in adolescence and adulthood. They can, these neurodevelopmental disorders, if they are not managed in the early intervention period, then they can develop or lead to psychiatric conditions in the adulthood which will be difficult to manage. So these neurodevelopmental disorders are increasingly being recognized as a leading cause of morbidity in children, causing greater suffering in the parents and families as well as large costs for the society. So this Kolkata development model proposes a unique and unified practice model which efficiently combines and simplifies management of all neurodevelopmental disorders and special needs in children. This development model is multidisciplinary, directed, standardizable, as well as universally applicable. For whom is this development model? This is for any children from 0 to 18 years old, any age, with having any neurodevelopmental disorders of any degree or severity. The model in a nutshell. The model has been in existence of more than a decade, almost over 15 years, and it has shown plenty of anecdotal evidences of its magical efficiency that puts such children in near normal functionality, obviously mainstream. So this development model, backslide please, it's multidisciplinary. We have a team of 32 professionals that includes vision therapists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, neurodevelopmental therapists, psychologists, genetics counselor, medical geneticist, developmental pediatrician at the apex. So it is in one-stop shop because all the therapists are under a single roof. Next, it is modular practice model. It is standardizable. Backslide please. Universally applicable, theoretically reproducible, and it's goal-directed to manage children with 0 to 18 years having various severity of neurodevelopmental disorders. So next. So how does this model work? First, we've understood that if a child has a stormy neonatal period, the child should go through the GM practice assessment. If the child is going through GM practice assessment, the child can be diagnosed with any kind of risk of developing cerebral palsy, autism spectrum disorder, or any other neurodevelopmental disorder. That child gets referred to our child development center. That is the initial contact where we share the screening materials with the parents. Then the parents are advised for the parental training program. That is the first step that we take towards this intervention. This parent training program consists of different kind of trainings, from behavior management training, language management trainings, screen time addiction, accident prevention, specific learning disorders, as sleep problems, eating problems, toileting problems, all these things. So this parent training program, after it's done, during that time there is health follow-up, health checkups that is done by the developmental pediatrician, and then we come on to the screening. This screening involves the screening out of risk of neurodevelopmental disorders, which go on to the standardized diagnostic assessment that we do. Then we go on to, after we get diagnosis of a child having maybe a neurodevelopmental disorder, we do provide the breaking news, which is a structured counseling program that is done by the developmental pediatrician. The psychologists reinforce that breaking news, the problems that the parents face after the breaking news. And then we do a multidisciplinary management meeting. In this multidisciplinary team management meeting, we decide onto the particular treatment plan of the child. Now that is tailor-made. That is not standardized for each child because each child has a unique trajectory of development. So after we decide onto the treatment plan, we do routine follow-ups. Each therapist does joint sessions every month to review the progress of the child, as well as every 3 months we sit, all the therapists, 32 of us, sit under one roof, track the progress of the child, and then plan for the next 3 months. This is how we do, and then we have also received those children who have gone through the process of discharge. Next. So, as I mentioned, I just read out the green points which I have already told you all. We do the practice GM assessment at the beginning or other accepted early detection tools. Secondly, is followed by a comprehensive parent training program. Then we do standardized assessment, diagnostic tests, which are ADIR, ADOS, Griffiths, Connors, Wisp, Bailey, etc. Then we do a center-based as well as a home-based. So when I told you about the parent training program, the intervention starts from that time, because the parents are psychoeducated about the different problems that the child will be facing. Before the child is given any kind of treatment or management, the parents are supposed to do the follow whatever we teach them. So once they start applying that at home with our guidance, we do get reviews of the child has stopped breastfeeding after 2 years of life. The child has stopped seeing into screens. The child has started eating by herself or himself. The child has also stopped, has reduced on repetitive behaviors. So these are few of the magical results that we get after the parent training program. Then, yes, that's that. Next. So this is a pilot study that was done in a retrospective aspect. This was done in 2018. So we actually took into account of all the children, 446 of the children who had come in at presentation, who were into different kind of schooling. Some were into mainstream, some were out of school, some were in miscellaneous school, some were in homeschooling. So when we see that, when we assess that how many children were in mainstream schooling, it was only 35.87% of the entire 446 who were into mainstream schooling having neurodevelopmental disorders from 0 to 18 years and having varied degree of severity. So we had inclusion criteria of 0 to 18 years, neurodevelopmental disability, or any other pediatric complex also we had taken it. And yes, next slide. So this is the entire case distribution that I'm going to show, but I'm going to go on to the results because that's more important. Next. So at the end of average period of 8 months of intervention or accessing the Kolkata development model, we see that children having autism spectrum disorder were at presentation 42% of the entire population were into mainstream schools. And after 8 months of average period of intervention, 86% were included into mainstream schools. In case of ADHD, autism, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, 30% at presentation, and then after average period of 8 months, 94% of the children were into normal functioning schools. For LD or ID, learning disability or intellectual disability, 39% rose up to 89% after 8 months of average intervention. Next, GDD or global developmental delay, 26% went up to 68% after the average month of 8 months. Next, so this model has some demerits also, as it has so many merits, which we have to work on in future. So the merits are, it allows a choice and partnership approach, which my respected dignitary previously spoke about. So we follow this CAPA, choice and partnership approach, where it helps the parents' engagement as well as compliance with the treatment. It's very important. Next is, it's low cost relatively. Next is, it is universally applicable to any age at point of entry, any neurodevelopmental conditions, mind you, and any degree of severity, starting from mild, moderate to severe and profound. And it has a high rate of success. It has some demerits also, where it is standardizable but yet to be standardized. Next, it also claims there are claims need to be examined in different settings. It is done in the Kolkata only at our CDC, but it has to be replicated at other centers to standardize it all over the world. Next slide. So this child has a genetic condition, chromosomal 2 duplication, is diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, global developmental delay, as well as has oppositional defined disorder. This child, So this child, I actually deliver psychological counseling as well as play therapy to these children. So this child stays in Imphal, does not come regularly, does come in a gap of maybe 3 months or 4 months. So when they come, they stay for 4 months or 5 months, like that. So this child did the entire thing. It was following instructions, was not at all self-directed. It was done in a group activity. There were other children there. He was communicating with them socially. He was following instructions. He was waiting for the instructions. As well as if you see, it is a painting. It's done with fingers. Usually, ASD has a tactile sensory problems. So, but this child did wait for his turn. Even if he wanted to go and scribble on the white paper, he did not. So after that, he showed the entire paper to me and I had to take a picture of him. So showing off was also very good. So this is that. Next. This is another child. You can see how beautiful the painting is, right? So he has excelled in studies as well as he has done such a beautiful painting. And mind you, one more thing had happened. I had done a voice reciprocal conversation session with him for almost 2 months. And at the beginning, and on the first session, he was not at all looking into me. No eye contact, just there, and maybe one word answers. Not that he is not verbal, he is fully verbal. Okay, communication skills lacking. After the end of 2 months of session, he called me because I had taken a break of 1 week because of my exams. He called me from his mother's phone, and he said that in Bengali and translated in English. He said that, why are you not coming to session, ma'am? I am missing you. So he said this entire thing in Bengali. Then he was speaking in one word at the beginning of the session. So this is a huge change again. Next. This was done with using clay. Again, a tactile sensory problem that ASD children do have, usually do show. So this was done in a group activity. They had this model displayed, they copied it. Because it was a structured thing, you don't really expect children with neurodevelopmental disorder to say, do this activity in a group, using tactile overstimulating items. So they did that. So it's so beautiful, right? Next. This is again a difficult task, but I made it happen. So all these things happen in our Kolkata development model. I just show what I did. Next. This is a great success that we have. So you can see all these children having different neurodevelopmental disorders, different severity, different age groups. We celebrated Teachers' Day last year, and you can see everybody dancing. So they were not even willing to stand beside each other, but it was an entire track of 5 minutes that played, and they were on stage smiling and enjoying. Next. The girl on your right, I think, she is singing actually. She is a girl who had come to us when she was in class 6, and her parents had come with this complaint that she was thrown out of the school, said that she will not be able to pass. Please get her to a special, admitted to a special school. So when she came to access our intervention, we followed it an intensive multidisciplinary therapy. And then this girl in class 10 scored 64%, and in class 12 she scored 84%. This girl, without intervention, without expert early intervention, would have not been able to sustain in this mainstream society because of lack of awareness, lack of training. So, and this is another child who is silently, patiently, with full attention, painting on a diya. So that's that. Next. I think again. So thank you very much. The next speaker is, I just read out, Dr. Dipanjana Datta. She is a medical geneticist. She is one of our team members. She is a BGCI Level 2 Certified Genetic Counselor and has 13 years of experience in the field of human genetics. She is the West Bengal Coordinator for Organization of Rare Disease India and also an invited member in the State West Bengal Rare Disease Task Force. Dr. Datta did her MSc in Biochemistry from Calcutta University and completed her PhD from Indian Institute of Chemical Biology, Kolkata. She was a postdoctoral fellow from Virginia Commonwealth University and has published in numerous international journals of repute like PNAS, Journal of Neurology, PLOS One, International Patent on Journal of Gastroenterology, etc. Dr. Datta also holds a patent on discovery and validation of new biomarkers for metastasis in head and neck cancer, along with other methods. We welcome you.
Can I see the slides? Thank you so much. This is a real opportunity. I would like to thank Dr. Anjan Bhattacharya for actually bringing me to this podium, and Apollo Jubilee DMS sir, Dr. Jagdish, and everybody in the team to give us the opportunity to speak over here. And today, what I would speak is extension of what Shreyoshi right now actually has spoken, but in a different angle. From the morning, there were very nice, scintillating lectures, which actually were also looking at, while we were discussing, we were also somewhere looking at the causes as well. So I would actually rather go ahead and speak a bit more on the causes and also give certain case presentations which we had at the Kolkata CDC with the Kolkata development model, and also how we manage those cases. So if we look at autism spectrum disorder, then we will see that the causes, if we know, these are internationally published papers, which would say that the causes are 40% genetics and 60% these are environmental. As Dr. Jagdish very beautifully brought up, environmental factors will bring about epigenetic changes, and that would actually affect. So that is exactly what we see all across in the international studies. But what we also need to see is that 40% genetic etiology, which stays over there. Now, doing so, which one?
Right, sir.
This one?
No, this one.
Yes,
okay.
So there, when we look at autisms and implications in genetics, there are published literature and published guidelines by the American Association of Pediatrics, which actually states that there are certain, it's not working, just wait. So please go next. Yeah.
So there are published guidelines and published community-based studies which actually say that why we should do a genetic screening. And there are recommended guidelines along with which should be followed for like to rule out that 40% of the cases. Next slide, please. So if we look at what is published, it is that among that 60%, about 40% would be common inherited variants and about 10% would be de novo variants. So this means that if we look at it, there is quite a bit of cases where we can definitely see that genetics might play an important role. Next slide, please. So even in case of ADHD, we do see that there is a series of chromosomal abnormalities as well as single gene disorders which would relate to certain neurite outgrowth genes or monoamine systems or the dopamine systems. And these are relevant because this might change the course of your therapies. Next slide, please. So why this is important in India? This is important in India because WHO actually states that this was stated around 2009 that India is a melting pot of genetic problems. The reason being, and they had stated that the non-communicable disorders will have a precedence over the communicable disorders. The reason being, next slide please, that in India we do have a lot of, just go next slide. Yeah. We do have a lot of endogamy. We marry inside communities, and in certain social systems we do have consanguinity as well. This leads to accumulation of certain negative genetic traits that would give rise to autosomal recessive disorders or the chance to have de novo mutations. Now, why this is important again? Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. So, in 70% of the cases where we are talking about like global developmental delay or failure to thrive, some sort of a neurodevelopmental deficiency, it may so happen that the cause is something different and it's cause of a larger systemic problem which we are probably looking at the tip of the iceberg. And what is important is that many of this can be prevented if actually screened. Next slide, please. So we heard the lecture of Dr. Jagdish, which was really so wonderful, and it talked about the first 1,000 days of life. Now, in US, Europe, and every other place, we do follow the newborn screening. Next slide, please. Where we actually, next slide, please. Yeah, we do follow the newborn screening, where actually there is a chance to rule out a number of disorders, like more than 160 disorders. You do a hearing screen, you do a congenital, like heart screening also. In these cases, you are actually picking up the risk population and you can go for a GM assessment and they can have early interventions. Unfortunately, in India, this is not uniform. Though we are doing certain isolated screenings, we don't do the kind of screenings which are done outside. But because of this, we keep missing cases which might be high risk at birth, but then are not presented in any way. They are asymptomatic and they are not presented in any way. Next slide, please. Hence, when we do a genetic evaluation, like Sriyoshi, my colleague, talked about assessments. So when we are talking about assessments, the genetic assessment is also a part of this kind of an assessment. Here we have certain verticals. So we first do a physical evaluation to look for this morphology. We look for if there is a mental retardation. For boys, it might be a Fragile X. So we look very keenly on that. For girls, it may be an MECP2. There can be inborn errors of metabolism. So a metabolic screening is done. And then if needed, then we go for an exome or a chromosomal microarray if there is an indication. Next slide, please. So why I brought this up? Because many a times we know urea cycle disorders. Now, urea cycle disorders often might present as hyperammonia, and these don't present at birth. Next slide, please. They present as ADHD and they present in the pediatric population. They are late onset, and even they can present as adults. If you don't do a metabolic screening, and if you might miss this population, and you might miss a very simple way to actually the therapies, the assessments are there, but you might also miss a very significant clinical sign as well. Next slide, please. So for all our cases, any individual who walks in, we do a physical evaluation. This is a standardized process which is done everywhere in America. This is something which is done for every children. We look at the mid-parental height, and we also look for each of these features in a very standardized way, and these are assessed and documented. Next slide, please. And why I'm saying this, because these are the kids you might get over there. You can see this child has a beak-shaped nose with a very prominent helix, anti-helix, a very adduct thumb, and all this actually are pointing to Rubinstein-Tyree syndrome. This child was undiagnosed for a very long time, and then we know it is Rubinstein-Tyree. So there is a specific standard of care along with the neurodevelopment therapy that needs to be given if we have to actually see any improvement in these kind of children. Next slide, please. Similarly, this is a very normal thing you see, which is Fragile X. In Fragile X, you can see that the child might not present with a very severe form, but might have a scholastic problem. And when they are presenting with a scholastic problem, they are sort of, thrown out of school, they are having behavior problems, and the problems get just added up. And these children, if they are actually, known to be Fragile X and they are given a certain kind of therapy and a certain directed type of neurodevelopmental therapy through the MDT, can actually get into the mainstream again. I must share a success story over here. I had newly joined CDC at that time, and there was a child who had actually come to just meet Sir. And the parents actually just had come because they were very happy. The reason they had come was the child who was actually being thrown out of school, like was not doing very well, was barely able to pass. The child had scored something around 60. And in what subject? Maths. You can understand maths is not an easy subject for them. The parents were very happy. The teacher actually had written a note to Sir saying that, what did you do in 8 months? That that the child is not only doing well, the child is behaving well, the child is behaving, the child has a lot of confidence in him. And the child on the other hand is actually saying, no, I think I did a lot of silly mistakes, I could have done more. So what else do you need? If a child has a confidence back and the parents are smiling, the school is rewarding. So this is something for these children, it's a huge thing, which even working in USA, there are certain things where I did not actually get such a feedback. I must say, I was so surprised. I keep saying the story to everybody because I myself was extremely surprised that such an outcome was possible. So next slide, please. So again, you see, this is another child. If you see, if the assessment is done correctly, this child actually has an Akari syndrome. These children have a problem with the eye. If we don't do an intensive vision therapy along with the other kind of therapies, this child will obviously have certain problems that will linger on. So the standard of care and standard of management will again change for these kind of children. These are detectable through just physical evaluations. Going further, next slide please. This is another child who came to us with a lot of developmental problems as well as hypotonia, repetitive speech, and a lot of other issues like clinical issues as well. And he had certain dysmorphisms which were very subtle. At the same time, he had a very high, very significant family history of speech and learning disorders, both in the maternal and the paternal side. Next slide, please. So for every family, we do, no, just previous slide. For every family, we do a very detailed pedigree analysis. This also gives us insight whether there is something more in the family and whether they are the high-risk populations who need definitely a genetic screening or not. In this case, because we saw this, we went ahead with a genetic screening. Next slide, please. So we found these 2 mutations in the gene, and then we went ahead and did the parental studies, and we found this child has Coffin-Siris syndrome, and it is known that the subtle varieties of Coffin-Siris syndrome will present with autistic traits. Now, in this case, obviously, we need a more intensive neurodevelopment therapy or more intensive therapies that are needed, and the child might need a bit longer to see the results which we are getting. Hence, the parents, if they are given these kind of goals, number one, they get a closure. They also know why my child is not, getting there when I'm seeing the other children are going there. So that actually gives them an assurance that, okay, there is a problem and we need to work harder. And so it helps them to engage more. Next slide, please. So this is a case study which I am presenting. This is
I wanted to present this because, you know, the father is a doctor, he's a plastic surgeon, and the mother is an anesthesiologist. So the child presented with a number of traits, which you can see on the screen. And next slide, please. And when we again did these kind, as I showed the documentation we did a detailed physical examination, and we got a number of dysmorphology, which you can see where we have marked. And when we did a genetic study for this child, we got, next slide, please, a chromosome Q duplication. Next slide, please. Yeah. A chromosome Q duplication, which is actually associated with central hypotonia, and it is also associated with delayed speech and certain developmental issue. Next slide, please. Now, yeah, so these are published papers where these abnormalities are known. So next slide, please. So when we saw, then they went through the assessments that are done. So this is Bailey's. Just look at the date of the assessment. It is 13th August 2019. Next slide, please. So this is how the child was doing with a DQ of 45. Next slide, please. And now, if you see the next date, it is 11th date of assessment is 11th February 2020. Next slide, please. And now you see the from gross delay, developmental delay, the child has improved to mild developmental delay, and you can see the scores yourself. And the dates are also there. So every time we assess a child, like the frequency, everything is documented, and these documentations also serve as a reward for the parents, because not only they are seeing the improvement, they have certain things on paper which is also showing an improvement. Next slide, please. So this is the assessments which was done before and after. The red ones are before and the green ones are the after therapy. And you can see the child actually has improved in all aspects. Currently, the child has started going to normal school and is completely sort of, they are still under therapy, but not that kind of an intensive therapy. And the child is going to school and is behaving well. Next slide, please. So this is the child my colleague Shreyoshi was speaking about. This is Ben. And Ben, actually, if you look at the child, see, you don't find any dysmorphism, right? The child looks more or less normal. But when we did a screening, next slide, please. This is the ADIR, which actually assessed him to have criteria for autism spectrum disorder, along with ADHD, along with anxiety, depression, and language issues. Next slide, please. And this was the genetic report where we saw chromosome 2q duplication again. Again, this child, even having a genetic issue, not coming to the center regularly, but following the home-based therapies as well as, you know, it was a mix of therapy, center and home-based. This child also at present is normalized, as the Shreyoshi actually pointed out. Next slide, please. So this is another child who presented with microcephaly. There was some like poor peer relationships and slightly was quiet in nature. Next slide, please. The assessment was done, and next slide, please. The assessment showed that he had abnormal ADIR with the diagnosis of autism. He also had ADHD. Next slide, please. And but his IQ was very high. It was actually assessed and it was found his IQ was very high. We did a genetic testing, but we found a gene, but this gene was not correlating. So you need to have certain people in your team who will actually understand which genes are correlating and which genes are not. We chose to ignore this because there was no correlation, though we had a genetic impact. We don't know what actually this meant and whether this could actually have an implications, but as of now, reported literature showed that there was no implication, so we chose to ignore this. Next slide, please. But very recently, this child actually, because he's 17 now, he is going to choose a career, and a career assessment was done. These career assessments are done from outside university abroad, and they don't have any idea that this child is actually a child who has certain neurodevelopment challenges. And you can see the aptitude. The greens are the ones which actually say that it's the best. And in most of the thing, the numerical ability, reasoning, verbal, rapid evaluation, he is in the top level. In the spatial and cognitive, he's there, he's good, but it's not worse, right? And that is a huge gain for the parents, because now you have a child who has high IQ and almost normalized.
Next slide, please. And same thing, with his aptitude and all, obviously he was suited for any stream he chose, and that was a win for us, the family, and definitely for the child. Next slide, please. So this is something which this is a study which is very close to our heart, because this is HR, and he presented with a number of issues: speech delay, global developmental delay, social behavior problems, ADHD, and diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. He had a history of hypospadias. His metabolic screening was normal. Next slide, please. A similar assessment was done. His chronological age indicated a delay. Next slide, please. And also his ADIR indicated an autism spectrum disorder. We did a genetic study, and here is where we got our key. We got that the child was compound heterozygous. It's a recessive disorder. The child was compound heterozygous for cerebral creatine deficiency syndrome. Now, this particular syndrome is actionable. And best part is that the child did not show any MRI signs. There was no brain signs there. Because if that happened, we would have lost it. Because we got this, the child was put on the therapy. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. So all these clinical evaluations were done, and we could actually confirm with the parental segregation. Next slide, please. And why this is important is, next slide, please. Yeah, because we have a therapy of creatine monohydrate along with certain amino acids, ornithine, and sodium benzoate with a protein restricted diet. Yes. Yes, we did, because we needed to look at the brain actually. So this we actually collaborated with Dr. Jalan, like we were talking. So this we actually took the expert guidance of Dr. Jalan, because we wanted to have his opinion on how to start the therapy and what to do, because we don't have a metabolic expert at our at center. But we collaborated, and Dr. Jalan very graciously, gave us all the pointers. And this is what happened, is that the child is right now almost normalized. And this is a great thing, because the child was non-verbal, now the child is verbal. The child has developed significantly, and the parents, the smile on the parents actually says it all. So we shouldn't miss these cases. People will say that these are rare, but what I wanted to say is that rare diseases are not actually rare in India. And if we don't screen, we will miss. And hence screening is necessary, because even if it is one child, and the child deserves that particular treatment, which will normalize it. And if not, then this child would probably have developed epilepsy. The child would have progressed. It is a progressive disorder, and the parents would probably have lost the child. So with that, I would, call my colleague once more, Shreyoshi, to introduce Dr. Anjan Bhattacharya. And I'm so thankful for this lecture, and I hope we can collaborate in future. Shreyoshi.
I take the honor to invite Dr. Anjan Bhattacharya, who is a consultant developmental pediatrician, head of the Department Child Development Center, Apollo Multispeciality Hospital, Kolkata. He has established India's first child development center in corporate healthcare setup. He is the WHO International Global Expert on ICF, COSET, cerebral palsy and childhood disability. He is the Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health UK examiner for DCH UK and MRC PCH UK examinations. He was the honorary affiliate tutor of Sydney Child Health Program, Australia. He has earned a number of awards, out of which he was awarded with Pioneer Award, East Zone Indian Academy of Pediatrics, and Bharat Jyoti Award. He was the ex-DNB Center Inspector, National Board of Examinations, New Delhi, and he was the ex-head academics of Apollo Clinical Children's Center. He is the director of the Knockout course, which he is going to introduce to all of you, and he is the director of Navajatak Child Development Center, Kolkata. I invite you, sir.
Thank you very much. You have heard about our stories. but we have permission for each one children. We have absolutely signed and genuine sort of assessed consent. It's not that they have signed and we use them. We only use them when we feel that they have given the consent from their heart. So we have discussed many consents that they have signed, but we didn't feel that they wanted to share. So these are people who wanted to share. Otherwise, we would have almost shown every child going through like this. And this is why we are here today, so that we don't fail any child, because technologically all these things are possible. And as Dr. Shabila in the morning said about this, that if we actually calculate, do the cost effectiveness analysis, the cost will be saving is astronomical. Just imagine a child going down, having epilepsy, and instead the child is normal, going to normal school. And if we can do 85%, and I should thank Dr. Pranati about saying about the difficulties she has faced. I'll tell a story about one of our fellows of Indian Academy of Pediatrics, who is now in UK. She, after passing her fellowship, tried very hard to establish child development center. She's a developmental pediatric fellow. Right? She wants to do a child development center, and went from pillar to post, used every single person to help her. Didn't succeed, so she moved on. So this is a loss to our society. You did it sort of 11 year ago or 8 years ago, whatever it was that difficult. Just imagine when I was doing it in Kolkata 15 years ago, right? But it is doable. That's the point. That's the whole point. This is where we come in. We must understand the importance of technology. Technology that is all around. This Kolkata development is a process. This is Indian innovation. And thank God for all these collaborations that we have. We can do research on this from a private hospital, boards of research. Every year we are going to all these prestigious conferences of top order. This is doable. At the same time, you can actually make these children better. So instead of going through the all these things, because there are videos and things, for sake of time, we'll move on very fast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move fast so that we do not miss out on the basic central point. So these were the Royal College lectures that we were giving, and where we have produced the Kolkata development model, as Srushi was saying. So these are the things where we say, there is a problem, solve it. Like the biomechanical model, the medical model of treatment. So that was 50s. Next slide, please. Then came the social model. There were a lot of care and sort of lot of NGOs and a lot of people sort of crying over a lot of things. We produce it because we need technology. Next slide, please. And the technology is Child Development Center. Why? Next slide. Right. I think many speakers in different ways told us about the biopsychosocial. So she was introducing me as the WHO expert in ICF. ICF is biopsychosocial. We have tools, clear-cut tools. We have worked with NITI and many centers in India and Sri Lanka, and we have produced it in Stockholm, the results of this biopsychosocial. So it was really a momentous thing, and it's a momentous moment today for our country as well, where we will take the technology from best of the world, Indian innovation, to the world, where Dr. Meenakshi was also saying about things that they were achieving there, are the same kind of things you can achieve here in India. Why? Because it's a human intensive entity. We will generate work, we'll train people. So she was talking about this Wisdom University of Technology course. This is a diploma course. This is a diploma 1-year course, practical course for doctors, nurses, therapists, psychologists, special educators, NGO providers, whoever wants to do it, they must learn this thing. They must learn how to make the child normal. Unless we try that the way we can, sitting in Kolkata, where even getting a room was a question, but we did it. So this is the thing. So we need to learn how to do the success. So let's go ahead, right? So things that we do, we'll just keep moving on. As I move my hand, just keep moving on. These are the ICF things we're talking about. These are the presentation we are doing. Now, here we come with study. This study we'll talk about a bit later. The tall lady here is my fellowship student from Queensland University in Australia. And the study we have done, we'll come to it in a minute. Next slide. So we had this iron and what you have just said, that home care is the best kind of a thing, even better than many sort of NGTs and other things. It's wonderful study. And with them, we had an agreement that we will take it forward. What are we going to take forward? Next slide, please. This is what it is, the practice assessment. What does practice assessment do? Next slide. Well, we have presented all these things. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah, this is the early detection. The paper, JAMA paper says from 2017, it says that we must detect these children early. How early? Next slide. This is another one. We'll come to it again. This is the slide we are talking about. This is the home care slide. Yeah, over. Next one. Yeah. So we can detect at birth by a clinical tool without touching the child. Just remember this. Without touching the child, much better than MRI scan. Much better than MRI scan and ultrasound sonography combined. This 98% accuracy of picking up risk of cerebral palsy. But what about other things? Next slide. Yeah. So next, these technical slides, I just want to go one after another very, very quickly. Right? There are a lot of science there. One day we will talk about it in Indian Academy of Pediatrics, DIUP platform. We have talked a lot. This is the emotional. Previous slide, please. Previous. Back. No. Go. Forward. Stop. Yeah. This is the emotional flower with its emotional petals. Dr. Jagdish was talking about this. It starts when mother is feeding the baby. Sometimes we will not be able to do fetal GM. Fetal GM is not available in India yet. One day it will be. But at least what we can do, we can preserve this flower that we are all born with by doing technological things. You can see how much technology is involved. But it's not rocket science. You know, it's not something that we cannot practice. We can practice. What can we practice? Next. Previous. Yeah. This one says that up to 60 to 66% accuracy, we are going to pick up risk of autism, learning disability, and other neurodevelopmental disorder just by doing that same GM, which is a 3-minute expert video technique. Video you don't have to take, but if you can, that is documentation. But if you cannot, then at least you can assess if you are a certified GM administrator. Next slide, please. Because now we have got enough evidence to say that we have adequate treatment for early treatment for autism. Next. You can diagnose autism because we have got infant widows and other things. So you can diagnose even at infancy. You can also do from 6 months. If you see traits, GM detects even before that, as opposed to 0% in three months, by 3 months of age, with any other methods, GM is detecting 60 to 66%. So why aren't we doing it? We should do it. Because when we do this effective treatment, the PACT study shows us that parent training is the key. Dr. Jagdish, I think Dr. Pranati, everybody was saying that parent training is the key, and she has clearly explained that is how we start our things. So it does magic. It does magic. Dr. Meenakshi was also saying, say all this science to the parents in the way they can understand. That is the key. You do that, and we have absolutely completely normalization up to 85%. The 50% will do better if everybody garner support. The 50% who do not at the moment can do better if we garner support. The 50% who do not completely normalize or doesn't go to the normal school yet, they don't stay bad. They get better. That's the learning lesson of Kolkata development model. Next. This is a video. We are not going to run it. Next. So it's basically similar sort of things. The father was referred from Germany by a German doctor to Kolkata Development Center because they thought the child is not getting better, probably because of the language issue. So German was difficult for this child. That is That is what they thought. But when they came here, we found out there is a whole list of complex things, epilepsy and whatnot. This child now is not only normal, he goes to school and stands in his class. This, standing in the class is not a rare thing in our child development center. It's quite a norm. I mean, many of our children are doing within the first 10. Some of them are coming first, some of them are coming second, some of them are coming sixth. Plenty like that. So this is the whole magic of Kolkata development model. If we meticulously try to replicate it, we will set up studies so that we can see whether it is transferable from to or not. I strongly believe that it is highly transferable. Yes, initially it is going to be very difficult without the team that delivers it. So if we collaborate correctly, we can come with a solution for entire world, not just India, entire world, definitely for entire third world, where children will be normalized, going back to the society, contributing members of the society. That girl she was talking about who got more marks in higher secondary than in secondary exam, which is not by 1 or 2 marks, more likely almost 20% jump. She is now pursuing a course in nutrition. So she is going to be a productive member of the society because she is normalized. There is no sort of loony aspects to her anymore. So this is where we are, why we have spent the whole day today. And this is the message for everybody that entire technology exists. Disability should not exist anywhere except on the eyes of the beholder. Disability only should exist in the eyes of the beholder. We have enough technology on earth to erase the face of this disability thing from our planet. Jai Hind. Shall we do question answers? Dr. Meenakshi wanted that as well. We have time for that. Or did there be the question I thought anyway? Yeah, any question in the chat? Yeah. Bring Dr. Meenakshi. She also wants to make some comments.
Just a second. No, sir.
I think there are a lot of disruption technical issues today, but again, as we have said, we started our child development center with a lot of technical issues. It doesn't mean that we're not going to do it. We're definitely going to do it. It matters. It matters to our society. It matters to our country. So no matter what problem comes our way, our job is to take that challenge and be successful. So that's what we're going to do. Again, Jai Hind. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anjan, sir, for your service and dedication and passion and enthusiasm towards the child development and the future generation. Thank you so much for your presentation about your Calcutta developmental model and your staff, your colleagues. Today, anyway, because of some technical problems, there was a delay accepted from our sides. I'm thankful and grateful to the Director of Medical Services, Dr. Ravi sir, and the management of Apollo Group, and also the speakers of the today, that is esteemed guest from the Calcutta, Dr. Anjan sir, and Shresthi, and the Deepanjani, and Apollo team, Dr. Pranati, pediatric neurologist, Dr. Sharmila, pediatrician, and also these are the people who presented well in their areas of specialization. So we covered almost all the subtopics of neurodevelopmental disabilities and neurodevelopmental and behavioral pediatrics. Dr. Meena Chandapalli Madam from United States, who presented through online mode. I thank Madam for your presentation. Thank you so much for your time, because it's almost midnight over there, but with great patience, you spent valuable time. Thank you so much, ma'am. And please kindly accept any delay, as well as any problems, technical whatever it happens. It's a human error, technical error happens. So thanks for the sponsors and thanks for the technical team, IT department, and thanks for the food, I mean the lunch and tea and snacks. And thanks the management of Apollo and the special, the sponsor of the Cognicare PS, that is Anselo Shield. Is that shield? Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your. Please come because you are the main sponsor for today's program. You initiated, you sponsored, the tasty lunch and snacks and tea. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm hand over because he has to speak at least. Thank you.
So, thank you, all the respected doctors, especially Randu sir, who has given us the opportunity to get associated. And yes, I'll take the name of Anjan sir, who has, in fact, since last 3-4 years, we are associated over there. Jagdish sir, Ranadilan, and all the dignitary speakers are there from India and abroad, who has given us the opportunity to associate with this big group, Apollo group. Yes, since last 3 years, we are into this. We are a pharmaceutical company, but at the parallel, we are probably playing a role of spreading awareness on autism. And during last pandemics and all, we have worked with AIMS New Delhi. We have worked with PGI Chandigarh and other. So the things are there. Yes, it's our great pleasure and pride to see that the doctor has thought ourselves we are competent partner to take forward this journey. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I request Director of Medical Services, Dr. Vaibhav sir, to speak. To say what happens. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I think, I should thank the technical team, almost I gave up. But I was just thinking, okay, it's going to be called off, but they never stopped, they went on. I think, there's a lot of stress these people were going through, but still connected and everything went fine. I think it's okay, no problem. I think, more problems, the stronger we become. And, thanks, Anjan sir. I think it's amazing work what you're doing back home, Calcutta. And wish and hope this will spread all over the country. We're doing much more good work. And beautiful. I think the speakers did a wonderful job. They have ignited all the minds. So I request everybody to come on the stage. I think there is a group photo that is requested. Thank you, everybody.
I think it's something. I'm the
Sir, we'll take an opportunity to take a photo with you over here. Please. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravi, for that.
I would like to especially thank person behind that marketing. So Ravi Garu, behind the scene, you are there. Attending all the calls all the time and helping me in the brochure design and coordinating with the Director of Medical Services and also other specialty of organization. Thank you. Not perfect.
Close, sir.